Chapter 1. Jasmine's POV. Harlow! My manager's voice cracked through the hallway like a gunshot, silencing every conversation within earshot. Heads turned. No one wanted to miss the show. He stormed toward me, his eyes blazing, and jabbed his phone inches from my face. On the screen, the email I'd sent barely 20 minutes ago. Is this a joke? Please tell me this is a joke. My throat tightened as I scanned the message. There it was, the mistake. I'd written 10:30 a.m. instead of 10 o'clock. A 30-minute error. Fuck. It's just a small, I began. A small what? He snapped, cutting me off. A small fuck-up with a C-level exec involved? Do you have any idea what you just did to the schedule? Jesus, Jasmine. Are you even capable of doing this job without tripping over your own incompetence? The words hit like a physical blow. Fury coiled tight in my chest, but I forced myself to remain calm. This wasn't about a typo. This was about reminding me of my place. I understand your concern, I replied, voice professionally neutral, despite the storm inside me. I take full responsibility and will ensure it doesn't happen again. He pulled out a thick stack of contracts, shoving them into my hands. Take these to conference room A. The Blackwoods are waiting. I gave a stiff nod and walked away, cheeks burning. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to put me in my place at Cadence Records. The thing is, I'm good at what I do. Exceptional, even. I navigate this chaos like I was born for it, juggling schedules, managing producers, keeping everything organized. I have a sharp ear for music and contribute to more projects than anyone realizes. But I'm invisible in the ways that matter. Just the girl who keeps the machine running. The moment I stepped into conference room A, the atmosphere shifted. 3 men sat around that stupidly expensive table, and I immediately understood why my manager had been sweating bullets when he handed me these contracts. Liam Blackwood commanded the head of the table like he owned the building, which he actually did. Sleeves rolled up over forearms that belonged in a fucking gym advertisement. Perpetual 5 o'clock shadow that suggested he'd rather be anywhere but in a boardroom. When he glanced up, his green eyes held the kind of stare that made you wonder if he could see straight through your bullshit corporate smile to every dirty thought you'd never admit out loud. Good afternoon, I managed, sounding way more professional than I felt. I have the contracts you requested. Thank you, Liam replied, his voice deep and smooth. Just set them down here. Moving around the table felt like walking through quicksand. Every step is hyper-aware, every breath calculated. I placed the copies in front of each man, and when Liam's fingers brushed mine, my brain short-circuited. Holy shit, he's gorgeous. Asher Blackwood sat to his right, and where Liam was a barely contained chaos, his younger brother was a polished control. Head of AR, power radiated from his perfectly tailored suit. Dark hair, tousled in that. I woke up like this, but actually spent 20 minutes with pomade way, and a jawline so sharp it could slice through my carefully constructed professional composure. His mouth lived in a permanent state of almost scowling, like he was constantly annoyed by everyone's existence. Anything else we need to know? His voice was rougher than Liam's, gravel and smoke, with an edge that sent shivers cascading down my spine like dominoes. Standard terms are highlighted on page 3, I replied, fighting to ignore how his stare made me feel completely fucking exposed, like he could see every fantasy I'd never voice. Then there was Finn Blackwood, sprawled back in his chair, with the kind of casual confidence that suggested he'd never encountered a situation he couldn't charm, manipulate, or fuck his way through. Their cousin, but he fit into their power dynamic, like he'd been molded for it. Tousled hair that begged for fingers, shirt unbuttoned just enough to be borderline inappropriate, and that trademark smile, the kind that could talk nuns into strip clubs. No instruction to leave, so I stood there like an idiot, trapped in professional purgatory, while they reviewed documents. But my eyes had developed a mind of their own, cataloging every detail despite every rational neuron screaming to look anywhere else. These weren't just my bosses. They were legends walking around in human suits. Powerful, successful, completely out of my 25 years old virgin league, in every conceivable way. Yet that didn't stop my brain from diving headfirst into dangerous, completely inappropriate territory. What would it feel like to run my fingers through Asher's hair? Mess up that controlled perfection? Would he lose that calculated composure if I pushed the right buttons? That man Liam? Fuck! Would that raw intensity translate into other areas? Those hands on my skin? That barely contained energy focused entirely on making me fall apart? And Finn? Jesus Christ! With that lazy smile and those knowing eyes, I could practically hear him whispering things that would make my toes curl. I was so lost in mental gymnastics that bordered on pornographic that I didn't realize how long I'd been staring, basically eye-fucking all three of them simultaneously, until Finn glanced up. He caught my gaze with laser precision, and that knowing glint in his eyes suggested he could read every single filthy thought racing through my head. "See something you like?" he asked, voice dropping to a register that bypassed my brain entirely and went straight to my nervous system. That trademark grin spread across his face like spilled sin, while mortification crashed over me like a cold wave. My face flamed red, and I quickly looked away, mumbling something incoherent about needing to get back to work. The other contracts," I stammered, backing toward the door like a deer caught in headlights. I fled the room as fast as my heels would carry me, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. Damn it, I was supposed to be professional, not fantasizing about my bosses like some schoolgirl with a crush. My phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me back to reality. The caller ID showed my baby brother's name. "Leo?" I answered, stepping into an empty office for privacy. "Jazz?" His voice was shaking, barely above a whisper. I messed up really bad." The air seemed to leave my lungs all at once. "What do you mean? What happened?" "I thought I could fix it myself, but they wanted the money immediately. They're not waiting anymore." "Leo, slow down," I said, gripping the edge of a filing cabinet for support. "What money? Who wants money?" "I borrowed it," he said, his voice cracking. I thought I could help. But now these people—" "How much?" I whispered, dreading the answer. $37,000. The number hit me like a physical blow, and I slumped against the wall, my knees suddenly weak. "Leo, listen to me." "Harlow!" A sharp voice cut through the office, making me jump. One of the senior assistants was standing in the doorway, hands on her hips, and an impatient expression on her face. "I need those media contact sheets for the Morrison project. Where the fuck are they?" Looking from the phone to the woman, I felt panic rising in my throat. I closed my eyes, torn between my professional responsibilities and my brother's terrified voice on the other end of the line. In the end, survival instinct won. I need this job more than ever now. "Leo?" I whispered urgently into the phone. "I have to go. We'll talk about this at home tonight, okay?" "But Jas, tonight," I said firmly, then hung up before I could change my mind. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked up at the assistant with a forced smile. "The Morrison materials are on my desk. I'll get them for you right now." As I walked back to my workstation, my legs felt unsteady. Everything around me looked the same. The familiar chaos of the office, the stacks of paperwork, the framed photos of Grammy winners on the walls. But it all felt suddenly fragile, like it could disappear at any moment. My hands were shaking as I reached for the contracts, and for the first time in my life, I understood what true desperation felt like. Where the hell am I going to find $37,000? Chapter 2. Walking into our apartment felt like stepping into a crime scene where the victim was my peace of mind, and the murder weapon was whatever fresh hell Leo had unleashed this time. Leo was planted on our piece of shit couch like he'd grown roots, staring at some mindless sitcom with the volume muted. His hands were doing this weird compulsive thing rubbing together, then wiping on his jeans, then back to rubbing like he was trying to scrub off invisible guilt. Classic Leo stress response. I'd seen it enough times to know we were about to have a conversation that would age me approximately 6 years. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Red flag number 2. Leo? I used my no bullshit voice, the one that usually got results. When he finally looked up, I wanted to travel back in time and hug 11-year-old me for thinking we'd escaped the worst of our childhood drama. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usually decent hair looking like he'd been stress grooming for hours. He looked younger than his 21 years, more like the scared kid I remembered from our worst foster placement. You want to tell me what's really going on? I stayed standing, arms crossed. Because $37,000 doesn't just materialize from thin air, and you've been acting like someone's holding a gun to your head. Leo's Adam's apple did this nervous bobbing thing. I borrowed it for Mom and Dad. I froze, the water glass halfway to my lips, and nearly slipped from my hands. I'm sorry, what now? They needed help, Jazz. Medical bills. Mom's been sick and... Stop! The word came out sharp enough to cut glass. I set my water down harder than necessary. Just fucking stop right there. Are you seriously telling me you borrowed $37,000 for those people? They're our parents. No. I was pacing now, because sitting still would have meant accepting this insanity. No, they're not. Parents don't abandon their kids. Parents don't choose heroin over making sure their children don't starve. Parents don't... They said they were clean! Leo's voice cracked like he was 12 again. They said they needed help getting back on their feet, that Mom had medical issues, and they just needed... How long? I spun around to face him. How long have you been talking to them behind my back? His silence was loud enough to wake the dead. Leo, how fucking long? A year and a half, he whispered. I swear I felt something break inside my chest. A year and a half? You've been in contact with those people for over a year, and you never told me? See? 'Cause I knew you'd lose your shit. Lose my shit? You mean react like someone with a fucking functioning memory? Like someone who remembers what they put us through? They said they changed. Leo was on his feet now, matching my energy. They said they were sober, that they wanted to make things right. And you actually believed them? I was shouting now. All pretense of calm shattered. After everything? After they left us alone for days? After the evictions and the fights, and the nights we went to bed hungry, because they spent grocery money on their next fix? Jasmine! No, you listen. Tears burned my eyes, but I pushed through. Do you even remember being 5 years old, and I was the only one taking care of you when you had the flu? Because they were too high to notice? Do you remember when CPS found us? We were 11 and 7, Leo. 11 and 7. Leo's face was crumpling, but I couldn't stop. Do you remember the foster homes? The Hendersons who locked us in the basement when we misbehaved? The Garcias who made us compete for meals? Mrs. Chen, who seemed nice until her boyfriend decided he liked teenage girls much more? Stop, Leo whispered, sinking back onto the couch. Why? My voice was breaking now. You want to remember the good times? What fucking good times, Leo? When exactly were they good parents? When they missed every birthday, every school event, every single moment that actually mattered? They're still our parents, Leo shouted through his tears. I can't just erase them like you did. I can't just pretend they don't exist. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. I thought maybe they really changed, he said, his voice completely broken now. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have a real family, that they could actually be the parents we deserved. And there it was, the truth that gutted me more than any amount of debt ever could. Looking at my little brother, my baby brother, who I'd raised and protected and loved more than my own life, I saw it written all over his face. He'd been hoping. All this time, he'd been hoping for something I'd buried years ago. Oh, Leo. I sat down beside him, my anger dissolving into something deeper and infinitely more painful. Baby, they don't change. People like them. They just don't. I know that now, he whispered. God, Jazz, I know that now. The money I sent wasn't for medical bills, was it? It was for drugs. It was always for fucking drugs. I pulled him into my arms as he broke down completely, his shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and wounded inside him. I fucked up, he cried against my shoulder. I fucked up so bad, and now these people want their money, and I don't have it, and I don't know what to do. How much did you send them? I asked quietly. Over the year and a half, maybe 15,000. They always had emergencies, always needed just a little more to get back on their feet. His laugh was bitter and broken. But the 37,000 was different. They said Mom needed surgery, that it was life or death, and I panicked. I went to these loan sharks downtown because the banks wouldn't give me anything. I closed my eyes, trying to process the magnitude of this disaster. What exactly did these loan sharks tell you? Interest compounds daily. They want 45,000 now, and if I don't have it by the end of next week? He shuddered. They made it clear what happens to people who don't pay. We'll figure this out, I said, the words coming out automatically. I don't know how yet, but we will. Whatever it takes. What does whatever it takes mean? I looked at my brother, my responsibility since I was 11, the only family I had left that actually mattered, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I'll figure something out. I promise you, Leo. We're not going to let them hurt you. He leaned against me, and we sat in silence for a long moment, both of us emotionally drained. I'm sorry, Leo whispered. I'm so sorry, Jazz. I know you've already sacrificed everything for me, and now I've made it worse. Hey. I tilted his chin up. We're family, okay? Real family. The kind that shows up and doesn't bail when shit gets hard. You made a mistake, but we'll fix it together. Leo nodded, wiping his eyes. I stared out at the city lights, each one representing lives that weren't falling apart, people who weren't facing impossible choices. $45,000 in 14 days. I wonder how much you can sell a kidney for these days. Chapter 3. 3 days had passed since Leo's breakdown, and I could feel the weight of it crushing us both. I sat at my desk staring at the numbers I'd scribbled on a napkin. My savings, $5,000. Leo's contribution from tips and his small emergency fund, $2,000. Total, $7,000. We were still $38,000 short. Lunchtime at work used to mean scrolling through Instagram and pretending my desk salad was actually satisfying. Today, it meant diving headfirst into the seventh circle of internet hell, hunting for ways to make 45 grand appear out of thin air. I'd already burned through the obvious shit. Side jobs that would take 3 years to pay off Leo's debt, gig economy apps that required cars I didn't own, and freelance opportunities that demanded skills I'd never developed because I'd been too busy raising my brother to learn how to code or become a social media influencer. Selling everything I owned might get me another few thousand, but it wouldn't even make a dent. Come on, I muttered, scrolling through job boards. There has to be something. Every search led to the same dead ends. Scams promising easy money, pyramid schemes disguised as business opportunities, and offers that were either too good to be true or required me to sell my soul to some multi-level marketing cult. Conclusion: there was no legitimate way to make that kind of money in a week. My browser history was becoming a monument to desperation. Quick cash jobs, emergency loans, no credit check, ways to make money fast without skills. Each search is more pathetic than the last. That's when I stumbled across something that made my stomach drop straight through the office floor. A forum thread titled, "Selling Virginity for Millions, Real or Myth?" My cursor hovered over the link for a full 30 seconds. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend I'd never seen it. The rational part of my brain was screaming to scroll past, find a normal solution, be a normal person with normal problems. But $45,000 wasn't a normal problem. I clicked. The thread was surprisingly detailed, with links to news articles about women who'd made headlines for auctioning their virginity. A model who'd supposedly received over $1 million. A college student who'd paid off her entire education. The amounts were staggering. One comment caught my attention. It's not just a myth. There are legitimate sites for this. High-end, discreet, safe. Virtue Exchange is the most reputable. My hands shook as I typed the name into a new browser window. The website that loaded was nothing like what I'd expected. Sleek, professional, and disturbingly legitimate. Like someone had taken the concept of human trafficking and given it a Silicon Valley makeover. Women auctioning their virginity for jaw-dropping sums, all under the guise of empowerment and luxury experiences. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through profiles of women who looked nothing like me, polished, confident, the kind of people who probably had trust funds and backup plans. But the numbers, the numbers were real, starting bids in the tens of thousands, completed auctions reaching six figures. This is insane, I whispered to myself, but I kept scrolling. It was terrifying, degrading, absolutely fucking insane and dangerously tempting. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about desperation. It makes the impossible seem reasonable. It takes your moral boundaries and relocates them to more convenient zip codes. All my life, I'd been too busy playing mom to Leo to have relationships, too focused on survival to waste time on boyfriends or one-night stands. I'd always thought my virginity and inexperience was just another thing that made me different, another way I'd missed out on normal teenage experiences. Turns out, some rich assholes were willing to pay a premium for that exact thing. The irony was so twisted it almost made me laugh. My purity, which was really just years of having zero time for romance, apparently had market value. Who knew? As I read through the site, calculating figures in my head, a knot formed in my stomach. Nothing I'd found so far offered this kind of solution. Nothing else could solve Leo's problem this quickly, this completely, and that fact alone made it impossible to look away. I was so deep in the rabbit hole, so lost in conflicted thoughts about whether I could actually go through with something like this, that I didn't sense someone behind me until I felt it. A soft breath on my neck, a warm, low voice brushing my ear. "Having fun at the workplace, Harlow?" I nearly launched myself into orbit, slamming the laptop shut so hard I probably cracked the screen, spinning around to find Finn Blackwood standing right behind me. Way too close, that trademark smirk playing across his lips and a dangerously amused gleam in his eyes. My heart was doing some kind of arrhythmic death dance. Had he seen what was on my screen? How long had he been standing there? "Jesus Christ," I gasped, pressing a hand to my chest. "Do you have some kind of ninja training, or do you just enjoy giving people heart attacks?" The words were out before my brain caught up with my mouth. Shit. I just swore at my boss. My extremely powerful, could fire me with a snap of his fingers boss. I mean, sorry, Mr. Blackwood. You startled me. That was unprofessional from my side. "Relax," Finn said with amusement in his eyes. "I just came to ask if you had those numbers for the Drake account." Right. Work. Normal, professional work things that didn't involve researching how to auction off my virginity to pay my brother's debt to loan sharks. "The Drake numbers," I repeated, trying to get my brain to function. "Right, yes, I have those." But Finn wasn't moving. If anything, he seemed to be enjoying my flustered state way too much. "You seem distracted today," he said, his voice taking on that playful tone that made my pulse stutter. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said too quickly. "Everything's totally fine. Just, working, doing work things, very professional work things." His smirk widened. "Uh-huh." I turned back to my computer, pulling up the Drake files, with hands that were definitely not shaking. Definitely not. I could feel him behind me, still standing too close, his presence like a live wire against my back. "Here," I said, printing out the reports and handing them over without looking at him. "Everything you need should be in there." Finn accepted the papers with a lazy smile, but his eyes lingered on my face. "You know, Harlow, if I didn't know better, I'd say you've been a bad girl, getting distracted at work." The words hit me like a physical blow. Heat shot straight down my spine, and my thoughts spiraled into parts of my body they absolutely shouldn't go. Especially not here. Especially not with my astronomically hot boss. My cheeks flushed crimson, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Just focused on getting you what you need. His gaze swept over me once more, that sly smirk lingering as he stepped back. Thanks for these. Try not to work too hard. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with my racing pulse and the lingering scent of his cologne. For a breathless second, okay, maybe more than a second, I considered it. Considered doing something reckless, something career-ending, just to see what it would feel like to have that man against me. On the desk, near the wall, on me, in me. But the moment passed. Reality crashed back like ice water. This was Finn Blackwood, heir to a music empire, probably had a different supermodel in his bed every night, definitely out of my league in every conceivable way. What would someone like him want with someone like me anyway? Totally inexperienced, totally ordinary, totally drowning in problems he couldn't even imagine. And besides, I had actual problems to solve. Dangerous ones. The kind that involved broken legs and concrete shoes if I didn't figure out a solution fast. Leo's crisis was still looming, and the loan shark's deadline was still ticking down. Lusting after my boss was a luxury I couldn't afford. I reopened my laptop, staring at the Virtue Exchange website still glowing on my screen. $45,000. 11 days. Sometimes the impossible was the only option left. Chapter 4. Meeting Nora for lunch is usually the highlight of my week. My best friend's chaotic energy and zero-filter commentary serving as the perfect antidote to whatever corporate bullshit I've been drowning in. We were sitting in our usual spot at the little cafe across from Cadence Records, taking advantage of our lunch break to catch up. Today, though, I'm carrying Leo's debt like a lead weight in my chest, and even Nora's trademark snark isn't quite hitting the same. She's already 2 mimosas deep, her dark hair perfectly tousled in that effortless way that takes her 45 minutes to achieve. Legal department pays better than the administrative, apparently. You look like death, she announces, not bothering with pleasantries. What fresh hell has life delivered to your doorstep this time? Good to see you too, I mutter, flagging down the server. And I'm fine. Girl, you've literally got that haunted Victorian orphan thing going on. She leans forward, studying my face with the intensity of someone who's made a career out of reading people. Spill! I order a drink, something strong enough to numb the edges of my panic, and deflect. Tell me about your weekend first. I need to live vicariously through someone who actually has a sex life. Nora's eyes light up like Christmas morning. Oh, honey, buckle up. What follows is a graphic, enthusiastic play-by-play of her latest conquest, some investment banker she met at a rooftop bar who apparently had both stamina and creativity. She describes positions I'm not sure anatomically possible, and techniques that would make a porn star blush. And then he did this thing with his tongue that literally made me see God, she finishes, taking another sip of her mimosa. I'm talking about a full-body religious experience. I might convert to whatever religion he practices. I can't help but laugh despite the weight crushing my chest. You're insane! I envied her confidence. Nora moved through the world like she owned it, taking what she wanted and leaving the rest behind. She'd been trying to set me up with someone for years, but I always found excuses. Speaking of men, she said, leaning forward with that mischievous glint in her eye. How are things with the holy trinity of hotness and masculine perfection upstairs? My drink pauses halfway to my lips. The what now? Don't play dumb, the Blackwood brothers. Please tell me you've at least noticed that you work for 3 of the most fuckable men in the music industry. Heat crept up my neck. Nora, they're my bosses. So? That makes it hotter, not illegal. She leans in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Liam's got that whole golden retriever energy, right? All sweet eyes and gentle smiles, until you realize he's probably the type who'd absolutely wreck you in bed and then bring you breakfast after. Jesus Christ, Nora. What? I'm just being honest, and don't even get me started on Asher. That man got that whole controlled dominance thing going on, like he'd fuck you on his desk and still expect you to take notes afterward. I tried to focus on my food, but images flashed through my mind. My face is on fire now. Can we not? And Finn, Nora continued, completely ignoring my discomfort, is basically a walking sex. All that lazy confidence, and that smile which could talk a nun out of her vows. I bet he's the type who'd make you laugh right before he made you come. Oh my God, stop! I buried my face in my hands, but I could feel myself blushing furiously. You're thinking about it now, aren't you? Nora's voice was pure delight. Finally! I was beginning to think you were made of stone. I am not thinking about anything, I lied. Bullshit. You're thinking about what it would be like to have one of them pin you against a wall. Nora, please stop. But even as I protested, my mind was already there. I especially think about yesterday, about Finn's voice in my ear, about the way my body responded to something as simple as proximity, about fantasies I can't seem to turn off. Why? You're practically squirming in your seat right now. Nora's grin is wicked. When's the last time you felt this turned on just from talking about someone? Never. The honest answer is never, but I'm not giving her that ammunition. They're completely out of my league, I say instead. I'm just a regular assistant in their label. They probably don't even see me as female. Cut the shit. Nora's voice turns serious. Jazz, you're gorgeous and you have no fucking clue. You walk around in those conservative little outfits, thinking you're invisible, but trust me, they notice. I've seen how they look at you. How would you even know? Because I have functioning eyeballs and I pay attention. Last company mixer? Finn couldn't stop staring at you. And don't get me started on the way Liam watches you during meetings, like you're the most interesting thing in the room. My stomach does this weird fluttery thing that I absolutely hate. You're imagining things. I'm observant. There's a difference. She points her fork at me accusingly. Your problem is you're so busy taking care of everyone else that you've forgotten you're allowed to want things. The words hit like a slap. It's not that simple. It could be. You're already working with them every day. You're smart, beautiful, and you're the only woman in that office who doesn't throw herself at them like they're some kind of K-pop boys band. Because I have professionalism. Because you're scared. Her voice gentles slightly. Look, I'm not saying you have to sleep with all three of them, though honestly, that would be the power move of the century. I'm just saying maybe it's time you stopped acting like wanting someone is a crime. Even if you were right, which you're not, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't have your extensive field experience. Experience is overrated. Enthusiasm counts for way more. That wicked grin returns. Besides, with men like that, they'd probably enjoy being your teacher. I can't just walk up to one of them and say, "Hey, want to take my virginity?" I protested. Why not? I bet they'd fight over the privilege. You're insane. I'm practical. Look, I've seen the way they look at you. All three of them. It's not a professional interest, honey. It's hunger. That's not. They don't. But even as I tried to deny it, I remembered moments, lingering glances, casual touches that lasted a beat longer than necessary, the way conversations seemed to carry undercurrents I didn't understand. The conversation shifts after that, but her words stick with me like thorns under my skin. As we part ways, she grabs my arm. Seriously, Jazz, life's too short to spend it wondering what if. And virginity isn't some precious gift you have to save for marriage. It's just another experience to have. Nora's words stayed with me long after I'd returned to work and home after that. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I pulled out my laptop, telling myself I'd look for legitimate opportunities one more time. But every job board led to the same dead ends. That's when I found myself typing those words again. Virginity auction. The Virtue Exchange website loaded just as pristine and professional as before. The whole thing looked more like a luxury concierge service than anything sordid. What the hell am I even doing? Shame coiled in my stomach, but so did something else. Hope? Desperation? I couldn't tell anymore. I closed the laptop without making any decisions, but I didn't clear my browser history either. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Leo stumbled through the door, still wearing his work clothes from the club. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he pulled a crumpled envelope from his jacket pocket. "They left this for me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "On my car windshield when I got off work." I took the envelope with trembling fingers, tearing it open to find a single piece of paper with a message scrawled in red ink. 8 days, no more delays. My blood turned to ice. 8 days? I thought we had longer than that. So did I. Leo's voice cracked. Jazz, what are we going to do? I'm scared. I looked at my baby brother and felt something harden inside me. He was depending on me. He'd always depended on me, and I'd never let him down before. "I'll figure it out," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "I promise, Leo, I won't let anything happen to you." But even as I said the words, I could see in his eyes that he wasn't convinced. Hell, I wasn't convinced either. Chapter 5. The apartment was tomb quiet when I finally heard Leo's bedroom door click shut. That night, after Leo's snores finally drifted through our paper-thin walls, I found myself back at the laptop like a moth to a flame that was definitely going to burn me alive. The Virtue Exchange registration stared back at me, all clinical white backgrounds and tasteful serif fonts, like they were selling luxury handbags instead of, well, me. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely click through the process. Terms and conditions that probably signed away my soul, privacy assurances that felt like wishful thinking, medical screening requirements that made my stomach clench. Step 1. Personal information. I typed my full name with shaking fingers. Age 25. Location New York. The questions became more invasive from there. Previous sexual experience? Medical history? Emergency contact? I paused at that last one. Leo's name sat in the contact field, and something twisted in my stomach. He had no idea what I was about to do, nor what I was considering doing. Step 2. Verification requirements. That's when the real wall came. Proof of virginity. I stared at that phrase until the words started to blur together. Proof. Like I needed a fucking certificate or something. Like my inexperience was a commodity that required authentication. Step 3. Terms and conditions. The legal text blurred together as I scrolled. Privacy protection, client screening, and payment guarantees. My cursor hovered over the agreement checkbox. 8 days, that's all we had left. The cursor kept blinking at me mockingly. Submit or close the browser, save Leo or save myself. Please, I whispered to whatever gods listened to desperate idiots, let this be enough to save him. With a breath that felt like swallowing glass, I clicked Submit Application. The confirmation page loaded immediately. Thank you for your application. You will receive further instructions within 24 hours. My reflection in the laptop screen looked ghostly pale, like I was already disappearing. I crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The girl who'd spent her whole life trying to do the right thing had just applied to auction off her virginity to the highest bidder. Fucking fantastic. I slammed the laptop shut and buried my face in my hands. What had I just done? The next day at work, I was operating on approximately 0 sleep and the kind of anxiety that makes your skin feel like it's crawling with ants. Coffee tasted like liquid regret. And even basic tasks felt like trying to perform brain surgery with oven mitts. Which explains how I managed to send Asher Blackwood's confidential demo files to the wrong artist management team. The demos weren't just confidential. They were top secret, classified, burn after listening level stuff. Some major artist he'd been courting for months, and I just handed their current label a roadmap to every negotiation tactic we had. I realized my fuck-up about 30 seconds after hitting send, which was roughly 29 seconds too late. The main office went dead silent when Asher Blackwood emerged from his glass top-floor cave, moving with the predatory grace of someone who'd perfected the art of professional homicide. His steel-gray eyes locked onto me with laser precision. My office, now! Even though his voice was quiet, it was the kind of quiet that hurricanes make right before they level entire cities. I followed him like a prisoner walking to execution, which wasn't far from the truth. He closed the door with deliberate precision, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Do you have any concept of what you've just done?" Each word was delivered with surgical precision, designed to cut deep. I opened my mouth to apologize, but he held up a hand that could have stopped traffic. Those demos were under strict confidentiality. The artist's current label will now know exactly what we're offering, down to the penny. 3 months of negotiations just went down the drain because you couldn't be bothered to double-check a simple file transfer. My hands were trembling so hard, I had to clasp them behind my back. "I'm sorry, I don't want to hear excuses." He moved closer, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, something expensive and seductive. "You'll spend the weekend calling every contact we have, doing damage control. You'll draft explanations, make apologies, and pray that our reputation survives your carelessness." His eyes never left mine when he leaned closer to my face, and I almost choked on my own heartbeat in my throat and intensity in the inches of air between us. "And if we lose this signing because of your mistake, it comes out of your future here and in this industry. Do I make myself clear?" Translation: I was one mistake away from being unemployed. And here's the truly fucked up part. Somewhere between his controlled fury and that predatory intensity, my body decided to betray me completely. That barely leashed power radiating from him. It was doing things to me that had absolutely no business happening during a professional ass-kicking. Christ, what was wrong with me? Getting turned on while being demolished by my boss was a new low, even for my disaster of a life. Perfect. Just what I needed while potentially selling my body to pay off loan sharks. "Yes, sir," I whispered. "Perfectly clear." "Good. I want a full report on my desk Monday morning, detailing every conversation, every response, every potential solution." He moved to his desk, dismissing me without another glance. "You can start now." The rest of the day passed in a haze of humiliation and panic. I stayed late, making calls to industry contacts and crafting carefully worded emails that basically amounted to, "Please don't completely destroy us because one of our assistants is a walking disaster." By 10 p.m., the office was nearly empty. My head was pounding, my throat was raw from talking, and I still had a dozen more calls to make. I was drafting yet another damage control email when I noticed something on my desk that hadn't been there before and made me do a double take. A takeout bag from Chez Laurent, the kind of upscale French place where a single appetizer costs more than my weekly grocery budget. Inside was a proper meal: coq au vin, roasted vegetables, some kind of fancy bread that probably had its own pedigree. I looked around the empty office, confused. The only other person still here was, besides me, Asher, hunched over his desk in his glass office, looking like he'd been there since the Mesozoic era. When our eyes met through the glass, he quickly looked away, but not before I caught something unexpected in his expression. Something that looked almost like concern? Under the food container was a business card I didn't recognize. James Mitchell, Senior AR Director at Atlantic Sound. On the back, in Asher's precise handwriting, "Tell him I referred you. He owes me a favor. This might help with damage control. A B." I stared at the card for a long moment, my brain struggling to process this development. Asher Blackwood, the same man who'd verbally eviscerated me 9 hours ago, had not only bought me dinner, but was actively helping me fix my catastrophic mistake. I ate the meal slowly, savoring flavors I couldn't normally afford, and wondered what kind of man could tear someone apart one moment and show such unexpected kindness the next. The business card helped. James Mitchell was indeed happy to assist when I mentioned Asher's referral, and he had contacts who could help mitigate some of the damage. By the time I finally left the office at nearly midnight, I had the beginnings of a solution. At home, I collapsed onto my bed, fully clothed, too exhausted to even change. I was just drifting off when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Your application has been reviewed and accepted. Virtual screening scheduled within 24 hours. Please await further instructions. Chapter 6. The laptop screen glowed in my bedroom darkness, casting harsh shadows across the degrading form I'd been staring at for an hour. The Virtue Exchange form sat there like a digital confession booth from hell, demanding age, height, verified medical history, and photos that would essentially catalog me like livestock. I'd been avoiding this moment all weekend. Every time I opened the laptop, I'd find something else to do. Dishes, laundry, reorganizing my already organized closet. Anything but filling out forms that reduced me to a commodity. But today, with hands that shook like I was defusing a bomb, I finally started typing. Age, 25. Height, 5 feet 6 inches. Hair color, brunette. Sexual experience, none. Medical verification required. Gynecological examination, within 72 hours. My hands trembled as I filled in each field. The photo requirements were worse. Professional quality images showcasing your natural beauty. No nudity, form-fitting and elegant clothing. Christ, I was literally creating a catalog entry for myself. I'd spend an hour taking selfies, feeling more exposed with each click. Leo knocked on my door just as I was debating which photos made me look like premium merchandise versus clearance rack disasters. Jazz, you okay in there? Leo's voice carried through the walls. You've been really quiet tonight. I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. Yeah, just working on stuff for tomorrow. Go to bed, Leo. All right. Love you, sis. Love you too. The secret felt like it was choking me and felt like swallowing razor blades. Every breath made it heavier. 5 days left, and Leo had no idea what I was considering. I reopened the laptop and stared at the submit button. My reflection looked ghostly, hollow-eyed. I clicked submit before I could change my mind. The next morning, I walked into Asher's office carrying my dignity in a manila folder and my self-respect in a carefully prepared presentation. I'd successfully contained the demo leak and had something that might actually impress him. Except when I knocked and entered, it wasn't just Asher waiting for me. All 3 Blackwood brothers were gathered around the conference table, like some kind of corporate pantheon, discussing deals that probably involved more money than I'd see in my lifetime. Liam looked up first, and that golden retriever energy hit me like sunshine. Jasmine, he said, standing with that easy charm that made my pulse forget how to behave properly. Perfect timing. We were just talking about the Morrison deal. Right. The deal I'd potentially torpedoed with my spectacular fuck-up. I straightened my shoulders and addressed Asher directly. I wanted to update you on the demo situation. I've managed to contain the leak. Asher barely glanced up from his papers. Contain isn't the same as fix. The damage is already done. Next time, double-check your work before hitting send. His dismissive tone hit like a slap, especially with an audience. But I'd expected this. Asher's ruthless exterior was as predictable as it was infuriating. Liam's expression shifted, protective edge creeping into his usually easygoing demeanor. Christ, Ash, give her at least a chance to finish before you tear her apart. Seriously, man. Finn nodded, that lazy grin turning sharp. When did you become such a hard-ass? Oh, wait, he smirked, always. She made a mistake that could have cost us millions, Asher replied coldly. But Liam's gaze was already back on me, encouraging. And that look, fuck. That look was doing things to my nervous system that had no business happening during a professional meeting. Actually, I said, voice gaining strength, I didn't just contain it. I used the situation to our advantage. I pulled out my folder like a magician revealing the finale. The leak made their team overconfident about their negotiating position, so I reached out to 3 other artists they've been courting and secured preliminary meetings for us. 2 of them are already interested in switching labels. The room went silent. Even Asher looked up from his papers, steel gray eyes focusing on me with laser intensity. Finn whistled. Sneaky. I like it. I also negotiated a partnership clause with Morrison's management, I continued, sliding documents across the table. First right of refusal on their next two signings, regardless of how this deal plays out. The room fell silent. That's... Liam's voice was low, impressed. That's actually brilliant. Damn, Harlow, Finn said, a playful tone replaced by something serious. Turning a screw-up into a strategic advantage. That's some next-level thinking. Even Asher's expression shifted, though he tried to mask it. The Morrison situation is still volatile, which is why I prepared contingency plans for 3 different outcomes. I replied smoothly, spreading more documents. If we lose Morrison, we have backup options. If we get him, we have leverage for future negotiations. If negotiations stall, we have alternative revenue streams already in motion. As I explained each scenario, I became acutely aware of how all 3 men were watching me. Something different in their gazes, an intensity that made my skin warm and breath catch. Liam's attention felt like sunlight, appreciative and admiring, but with an underlying heat that made me hyper-aware of every movement. When I reached across the table and our fingers brushed, electricity shot up my arm like I'd been tasered. Finn's grin had evolved into something more appraising, like he was seeing me in an entirely new light. His eyes tracked my movements with predatory appreciation. And Asher was studying me with that penetrating stare that always made me feel exposed, but now there was something else there. Something that looked almost like hunger, quickly concealed behind his professional mask. The meeting continued for 20 minutes, but the energy had shifted. Every exchange felt charged. Every look lasted longer than it should have. When they asked questions, I was acutely aware of how they were positioned, how their attention felt like physical touch. As I gathered my papers, I remembered what Nora had said about the looks the Blackwood brothers gave me. At the time, I'd dismissed it as her imagination. Now, walking out with their eyes following my every movement, I couldn't deny the truth. They weren't just looking at me as an employee. "Jasmine," Liam called as I reached the door. "Excellent work on this, really." "Thank you," I managed. "We should discuss strategy implementation over dinner," Finn added casually. "All of us. To make sure we're aligned." The suggestion hung in the air, loaded with possibilities I didn't dare examine. "I'll check my schedule," I said, then escaped before I could say something I'd regret. Back at my desk, I tried to focus on other tasks, but my mind kept returning to that conference room. The way they'd looked at me, the underlying current of something dangerous and intoxicating. Despite everything, Leo's situation, the virtue exchange, the impossible circumstances crushing my life, I couldn't deny that I'd actually loved the way they'd looked at me in that conference room. The attention, the appreciation, the underlying current of something dangerous and intoxicating, and I hated myself for it. Here I was, potentially about to auction off my virginity to pay my brother's debt, and I was getting distracted by the way my boss's eyes lingered on me a little too long. But the feeling clung to me like expensive perfume, a guilty pleasure I couldn't quite shake. That evening, I opened my laptop and found a message from an unknown sender. My heart stopped at the subject line. Profile approved, next steps. Dear Jasmine, your application has been reviewed and your profile approved for our exclusive auction platform. Based on your submitted information, we anticipate significant interest from our verified client base. Please review the attached documentation regarding medical verification requirements, legal protections, and auction procedures. Regards, the Virtue Exchange team. My fingers hovered over the touchpad. I'd taken the first step into hell, and there was a red carpet laid out for the rest of the journey. 5 days until Leo's deadline. However many days until I had to sit in front of a screen and my virginity selling to the highest bidder. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd just had the most professionally triumphant moment of my career, earned the respect and attention of 3 of the most powerful men in the music industry, and felt more desired than I ever had in my life. And I was about to throw it all away to save my brother from his own catastrophic choices. Well, there was no turning back now, I guess. Chapter 7. I was so lost in my thoughts about the Virtue Exchange email That the universe decided to fuck with me again. I didn't see Liam emerge from the conference room until I nearly collided with him. His hands shot out instinctively, fingers wrapping around my waist with surprising strength. "Whoa there, Jasmine," he said, that easy smile spreading across his face like warm honey. "You okay?" The proximity hit me like a drug I didn't know I was addicted to. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and clean, and terrifically expensive. His shirt was perfectly tailored, showing off arms that suggested he actually used that executive gym membership. And his hands were still on me, thumb absently stroking over the fabric of my blouse, like he didn't even realize he was doing it. Spoiler alert. I was definitely realizing it according to the immediate wetness between my legs. Damn it. "Yeah, sorry, I'm fine," I managed, but my voice came out breathier than intended. Liam's eyes darkened, and suddenly, we were just standing there in the hallway, like two idiots, the air between us crackling with enough tension to power the building. Standing this close to him, feeling actual heat radiating from his body, my brain decided to take a little vacation to Pornland. What would happen if I were braver? If I wasn't his employee? If I could just reach up and run my fingers through that perfectly messy hair? What if those strong hands explored more than just my waist? Heat pooled low in my belly, and I had to bite my lip to keep from making some embarrassing sound that would broadcast exactly what I was thinking. What would it feel like to have Liam's mouth on mine? To have him press me against the wall and— Actually, Liam's voice cut through my X-rated daydream, making me blink back to reality, like someone had thrown cold water on me. "I was hoping to catch you. Could you come to my office for a minute? There's something I'd like to discuss." I nodded, not trusting my mouth to form actual words, and followed him down the hallway. Trying not to focus on how his shoulders moved under that perfectly tailored shirt was like trying not to breathe. Impossible and mildly suffocating. In his office, Liam gestured for me to sit while he leaned against his desk, close enough that I could see light flecks in his green eyes. Close enough to be dangerous. "Jasmine, I'll cut to the chase. Our previous personal assistant had to relocate unexpectedly, and my brothers and I have been discussing who could fill the position." He paused, gaze intent on my face. "We'd like to offer it to you." My brain short-circuited. "Personal assistant to all three of you? It means more responsibility, more demanding hours, and you'd be working much more closely with us on sensitive projects." His voice dropped slightly, and I swear I felt it in places that had no business responding to professional conversations. "But it also comes with a significant salary increase, nearly double what you're making now." Nearly double. The words hit me like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning in loan shark debt. "Yes," I said immediately, a bright smile spreading across my face before I could stop it. "Yes, I'd love to accept." The moment that smile appeared, something shifted in Liam's expression. He went completely still, staring at me with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. There was something almost reverent in his gaze, like someone seeing sunlight for the first time after being trapped in a cave. The air between us became electric. I felt heat creep up my neck and flood my cheeks under the weight of his attention. The silence stretched, heavy with all the things we definitely shouldn't be thinking about each other. Liam was the first to break the spell, clearing his throat and running a hand through his hair, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as his nervous tell. "Your smile," he said, voice rougher than usual. "It's just like— it lights up the whole room." He cleared his throat again, obviously trying to claw back some professional composure. "I mean, that is to say, your positive attitude is exactly what we need for this position." The compliment, even wrapped in corporate speak, made my blush deepen to probably radioactive levels. "Are you ready to start right away?" he asked, clearly trying to steer us back to safer territory. "You can move your things to the desk just outside my office. It'll make coordination easier." Translation: I'd be stationed directly in the line of fire between all three brothers. Fantastic. "Of course," I said, standing on slightly unsteady legs. "I can start immediately." "Good." His smile was warm but controlled, I'll have HR send over the paperwork, and we can discuss your new responsibilities later today. I left his office feeling like I was floating. Nearly double my salary, working directly with all three brothers. It was like the universe was throwing me a rope just when I needed it most. The next hour passed in a blur as I transferred my belongings from my old desk to my new workspace. The location was strategic, positioned directly between all three brothers' offices, like I was literally at the center of their professional world. I was organizing my new supplies when Nora appeared, eyes bright with curiosity and mischief. "Well, well, well," she said, perching on the edge of my new desk like she owned the place. "Someone got a promotion. Spill everything." They offered me the personal assistant position, I explained, trying to keep my voice casual. "It's a significant salary increase and more responsibility." Nora's knowing grin suggested she wasn't buying my professional tone for a second. "Oh my God," she laughed. "Stage one of the fuck one of your sexy bosses plan is officially complete. Next step, tight skirts and blouses that actually show off those curves you keep hiding under corporate camouflage." "Nora!" I hissed, frantically checking to make sure no one had heard. "There is no such plan. It's just a job promotion." "Uh-huh, sure it is." She was already standing, wicked smile firmly in place. "And honey?" She leaned in conspiratorially. "You might want to squeeze your thighs together after your next meeting with Liam if you don't want everyone to notice how much you're enjoying your new position." "What is that supposed to mean?" I demanded. But Nora was already sauntering away, leaving me red-faced and flustered. "Figure it out, sweetie," she called over her shoulder. "I have faith in you." I sank into my new chair, trying to process everything that had just happened. As I looked around my new workspace, positioned perfectly to see into all three brothers' offices, I realized Nora was right about one thing. This wasn't just about the job. This was about wanting something I'd never allowed myself to want before. And for the first time in my life, it felt like maybe, just maybe, that something might want me back. My phone buzzed with a text from Leo. "Baby bro, how's the job hunt going? Any luck finding extra work?" I stared at the message, guilt twisting in my stomach. He had no idea about the promotion, about the virtue exchange, about any of the desperate measures I was considering to save him. I texted back. "Me. Working on it. Don't worry." Chapter 8. Working as the Blackwood brothers' personal assistant is like being dropped into some alternate reality where professional boundaries are more like gentle suggestions and every interaction feels like foreplay disguised as corporate efficiency. It's been 3 days since my promotion, and I'm losing my goddamn mind. Nora's advice about squeezing my thighs together is becoming less a joke and more a survival strategy. Each glance, each casual touch sends heat pooling low in my belly and makes me hyper-aware of how my body betrays me around them. But I keep telling myself it's all in my head. Projection. Wishful thinking from a virgin who's been reading too much into innocent professional interactions. Because here's the thing that makes everything feel twisted and wrong. The auction. Today is the final day. In a few hours, I'll know which stranger gets to claim my virginity for the right price. The thought makes my stomach turn violent somersaults. What if it's some ancient creep, some psycho with a collection of restraints and questionable hygiene? Some entitled asshole who thinks purchasing my first time gives him ownership over my entire existence? These fears make my fantasies about the Blackwood brothers feel dirty, tainted. How can I daydream about men like them, successful, gorgeous, powerful enough to have anyone, when I'm literally about to become a commodity for the highest bidder? I feel unworthy. Damaged goods before the transaction even happens. So when Finn approaches my desk Friday afternoon with that trademark easy smile, I'm already emotionally maxed out. "Hey, Jasmine, Asher's birthday is coming up, and we're trying to come up with the perfect gift. Any ideas?" I suggest the usual corporate gift bullshit. Expensive whiskey, limited edition vinyl, some artisanal whatever that rich people pretend to care about. But Finn shakes his head thoughtfully. "Why don't you come over tonight to brainstorm with Liam and me at his place?" My heart rate spikes. Not just from the invitation, but because tonight is when the auction ends. When I find out who bought me. I appreciate the offer, but I'm pretty tired. I try carefully, making excuses that sound weak even to me. Maybe on Monday? Come on, Finn persists with that persuasive charm that could probably talk nuns into strip clubs. It's Friday, the end of the work week. Might be a good way to spend the evening and get to know each other better. Professionally, of course. His smile is warm but insistent, and despite every alarm bell in my head screaming about the auction deadline, his persuasive nature wears down my resistance like water on stone, which is how I end up at Liam's penthouse, experiencing what can only be described as forced ovulation at the sight of him lounging in gray sweatpants and a tight white t-shirt that showcases every line of his torso. Casual Liam is a completely different species from CEO Liam Blackwood. Less polished control, more raw masculinity that makes my mouth go dry and panties wet. "Hey guys," he said, his voice more eager than usual. "Come in." We settle around his dining table, ostensibly to discuss Asher's gift. The conversation flows easily at first, but there's an undercurrent of tension that makes the air feel electric. Liam keeps biting his bottom lip and watching me with unusual intensity, like he's fighting some internal battle. When I offer suggestions for Asher's gift, Finn dismisses them all with a mischievous smile that sends warning bells clanging in my head. Every time one of them spoke to me, it felt like they were really seeing me, not just listening. Finn dismissed every one of my suggestions once again with a mischievous smile. "I think I have the best idea." He stood up, pulling his phone from his pocket, and moved around the table toward me. There was something predatory in his grace that made my pulse quicken. When he reaches my chair, he leans down, caging me in by placing his hands on the table on either side of me, his body radiating heat. Then he places his phone in front of me, screen up, and my blood turns to fucking ice. Staring back at me is my own face from the Virtue Exchange profile. My carefully crafted catalog entry for auctioning off my virginity to strangers. I freeze completely, can't speak, can't move, can't even breathe. My eyes dart frantically to Liam, who's watching me with an expression I've never seen before. Raw, primal hunger barely held in check. "I was quite shocked," Finn whispers, his breath warm against my ear, "when I discovered what exactly my employee was browsing during work hours." His tone is teasing, but not cruel, laced with something that sounds almost like admiration. "Don't look so terrified, sweetheart," he continues, his breath warm against my ear. "We're not disappointed, believe me." He swiped to the bidding page right in front of me, where numbers I could barely comprehend flashed on the screen. My auction had drawn serious attention. Liam's voice, rough with barely controlled emotion, joins the conversation. "We're furious that you felt forced to sell yourself to strangers, but we're also—" He pauses, eyes burning into mine. "Deeply drawn to you." Finn's hand came up to gently stroke my hair, the touch surprisingly tender. "All three of us, Jasmine. We've been trying to fight it, trying to keep things professional, but seeing this—" He gestures to the phone screen. "We can't stand the thought of some stranger having what we've been craving. My carefully constructed walls don't just crumble, they fucking implode. The humiliation of being discovered, wars with desperate longing I've been suppressing like it's a goddamn federal crime. Their words, their presence, the heat radiating from their bodies. It's sensory overload in the best and worst possible way." "You've been craving me?" The words slip out before I can stop them, disbelief making my voice crack like I'm going through puberty again. Liam leans forward, his restraint hanging by a thread so thin I can practically see it fraying in real time. "Are you kidding? You walk around that office like you have no idea what you do to us. Those conservative little outfits that somehow make you look more tempting than if you were wearing nothing at all. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating," Finn adds, his thumb tracing my jawline. "The way you blush when we compliment you. The way you try to hide how you react when we get too close." My face is on fire. I don't. You do. Finn's voice is gentle but certain. You squeeze your thighs together every time one of us gets within 2 feet of you. You think we haven't noticed? Christ. They've been cataloging my body's betrayals like scientists studying a particularly interesting specimen. So what are you saying? I managed to whisper. Liam leans forward, his restraint clearly hanging by a thread. If you really think you have to sell your body, he says quietly, eyes never leaving mine, then let it be to men you can trust, men who already care about you. The room falls silent, except for my racing heartbeat, and the sound of my entire worldview shifting on its axis. My mind is reeling with implications. The money I owe, Leo's terrified face, the threats hanging over our heads like a sword of Damocles, but also this unexpected lifeline from 3 men who apparently see me as more than a transaction. You want to buy me? I say, testing the words. We want to choose you, Liam corrects, and you to choose us. All of us want to adore you, Finn adds, his voice dropping to that register that bypasses my brain entirely. It's better to give you something unforgettable rather than let you become a commodity for strangers, isn't it? The brutal honesty hits me like a freight train. These aren't just my bosses anymore. All 3 of us want you, Liam says, his control cracking. We've wanted you for weeks, months maybe. But we thought you were off limits, untouchable, too good for men like us. I almost laugh at the irony. Too good? I'm literally selling myself on the internet. You're trying to save your brother. Finn's voice cuts through the tension like a blade. We know about Leo's debt. Of course they know. They're the Blackwood brothers. They probably know my social security number and my favorite coffee order. All 3 of you, really? The question escapes before I can filter it. The temperature in the room spikes about 40 degrees. If that's what you want, Liam says, his control cracking just enough to show the heat underneath. We're not exactly opposed to sharing. Finn's grin turns wicked. Me and my cousins have shared everything since we were kids. Why not the most gorgeous woman we've ever met? Chapter 9. Without warning, Finn's finger swipes to the live bidding page on his phone, and my entire world tilts sideways. He begins typing in amounts, while pressing lightly against my back, his lips hovering dangerously close to my cheekbone as he leans over my chair. The casual contact sends unexpected heat through my body, despite the shock currently short-circuiting my brain. What do you think, cousin? Finn asks Liam teasingly, his voice low and playful as he enters the first bid. How much should we bet on our beautiful assistant's V-card? Jesus fucking Christ! They're actually doing this, right in front of me. They're bidding on me like I'm some kind of auction item, which, okay, technically I am, but still. My entire body tensed, locked between panic and heat. Liquid, dizzying heat. 50,000. Liam replies immediately, his voice rough with barely controlled desire, eyes never leaving my stunned face. I watched in horrified fascination as Finn entered the amount. His free hand slid casually onto my thigh. The contact burned, and I wanted to flinch, to stay perfectly still and feel everything even in this insane situation. Another bid flashed on the screen seconds later. Higher. Finn chuckled, his breath brushing my ear, and I nearly whimpered. 75, he murmurs, his body now fully pressed against my back when he typed it in with calm ease. This is insane. This is completely fucking insane. The bidding war escalates quickly, with Finn and Liam calling out increasingly higher amounts. I should be horrified. I should be angry. I should be running for the door. Instead, I'm sitting here like some kind of willing participant in my own commodification. Getting wet by the way they're treating me like the most precious thing they've ever wanted to get. What the hell is wrong with me? The numbers kept climbing. Other bidders were competing, but Finn and Liam seemed determined to outbid everyone. When Finn entered what became the final bid, $213,000, I sat in stunned silence as it won the auction. The number was astronomical, more than enough to pay off Leo's debt 5 times over. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. These men were really prepared to pay that much to spend a night with me? The reality hits like a physical blow, and anger flares alongside the confusing arousal. I start to stand, ready to confront them, words of indignation forming on my lips. But Finn's hands gently turn me in my chair to face him before I can speak. "Easy there, Bunny," he says softly, his thumb tracing along my jaw, completely disarming my anger with that simple touch. Before I can process what's happening, Liam appears beside us, his large, warm hands gently cupping my face, forcing me to meet his intense green eyes when I turn into Finn's arms and his chest pressed against my back once again. "We won't touch you against your will," he says softly, voice steady and reassuring, "and you'll get your money regardless of what happens tonight. But Jasmine," his thumb strokes across my cheekbone, "we want you to know that this isn't just about the auction anymore." Behind me, Finn's hand slides from my face down to my stomach, the movement slow, deliberate, possessive. "We'd love to show you how well we can take care of you," he whispers against my ear, his words making my breath catch and my core clench with want. "But you have to admit your own desires. You have to tell us you want it too." I feel a pulsing need between my thighs, desperate longing for more than just their gentle caresses. My body is betraying me completely, responding to them in ways that make me feel shameful and mortified, yet extremely turned on at the same time. How can I want this so desperately when I should be angry? How can their touches make me feel like I'm burning alive with need? "I don't understand," I whisper, my voice barely audible. "Why me? You could have anyone." Liam's finger comes up to lightly touch my bottom lip, the gesture so tender and intimate it makes my heart race even faster. "Because you're incredible," Liam said simply. "You're a smart, brave, and beautiful woman, because we've been watching you, wanting you, for months." "Because," Finn added, his thumb stroking across my cheek, "we don't just want your body, Jasmine. We want you, all of you." The sincerity in his voice takes my breath away. His eyes search mine, waiting for my answer, and I see something there that makes my chest tight. Not just desire, but genuine affection, care, maybe even something deeper. The combination of their reverent touches, their sincere promises, and my own desperate longing finally broke through all my resistance. My body was screaming for their touch, and I couldn't deny the truth anymore. I wanted this as much as they did. With my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it, I gave a shy nod, barely able to meet their eyes as I surrendered to what I'd been craving for so long. The moment I nodded, Liam's lips were on mine, soft at first, almost reverent, like he was kissing something sacred. His mouth moved slowly against mine, savoring every brush, every shared breath, like he had all the time in the world to explore me. "Good girl," Finn murmurs against my neck, his voice filled with approval and desire, as his lips press burning kisses along my sensitive skin, making me arch against him. I gasped softly, my hands clutching Liam's shirt as the kiss deepened. His tongue slipped past my lips, coaxing mine into a slow dance that made my entire body thrum with longing. Every movement felt like a promise, a delicious tease of what was to come. Liam kissed me like a man starved, but still so careful, so achingly gentle. He pulled back just enough to whisper against my lips, "You're so sweet, Jasmine. You taste like honey." I whimpered softly, desire building like a storm inside me. Wrapped in their heat, their scent, their attention, I was completely surrounded and wholly undone. Finn's hands were more daring now. One slid beneath the hem of my blouse, grazing the curve of my ribcage, his fingertips warm and gentle as they traced lazy circles that made my stomach flutter. His other hand remained possessive on my thigh, applying the slightest pressure, as if reminding me he was still there, still part of this growing inferno. They were savoring me, worshiping me, and God help me, I loved it. "You feel that?" Finn whispered, his voice thick with hunger, as his lips traced the curve of my shoulder. "That's what you do to us. We've been waiting to touch you like this for so long." The shame and hesitation begin to fade, replaced by pure sensation and the overwhelming feeling of being desired and cherished by these incredible men. Finn's body was pressed so close behind me, I could feel every rise and fall of his chest against my back. I shivered as his lips deepened into deliberate kisses that made my body arch against him. He knew exactly what he was doing. Liam's mouth moved against mine with growing heat. His kiss wasn't just passionate, it was consuming, full of restraint that was beginning to break. His hands found the hem of my blouse, and with a single glance into my eyes, he lifted it off me, leaving me in my bra, breathless and trembling. "Beautiful," he murmured against my mouth, as if the word belonged to me and me alone. Finn's fingers trailed beneath the waistband of my skirt, brushing the sensitive skin at my hips. I gasped when his hands slid down to grip the backs of my thighs, lifting me just enough to drag the fabric down. I kicked it away without a second thought, too caught in their touches, their mouths, the heat radiating between us. Their hands never stopped moving, slow, sensual, and patient. When Liam unclasped my bra and slipped it from my arms, he didn't gawk. He cupped me gently, brushing his thumbs over my nipples until they hardened beneath his touch. His mouth followed seconds later, warm and wet and maddening. My moan was swallowed by Finn's kiss, his tongue teasing mine, coaxing me to surrender deeper. Caught between two powerful men, each lavishing me with attention like I was something sacred, I realized that I never even imagined being touched like this. I'm wearing nothing but a pair of lace panties, lost in the sensations of being kissed and caressed by both men, when the sound of footsteps makes me freeze. Asher enters the room, and mortification crashes over me like ice water. Chapter 10. God. Oh my fucking God. I'm half naked in front of my other boss, the one who already thinks I'm a walking disaster, the one who intimidates me and turns me on in equal measure. My instinct is to grab my clothes and run for the nearest exit. But Liam's hands cup my face before I can move, forcing me to meet his eyes as he continues touching and kissing me with renewed intensity. His mouth claims mine deeply, making me feel safe despite my panic, his touches grounding me in the moment. "No, Jasmine," he whispered, voice steady. "Stay with me." His thumbs stroked across my cheeks as he kissed me again, deep and claiming. I whimpered against his lips, my panic softening under the weight of his affection. While Liam kissed me senseless, Finn moved away to greet his cousin. I could hear their voices low and steady in the background, but Liam's kisses, his hands, kept me too dizzy to make out the words. When Finn returned, there was something in his hands, a silk tie, deep navy, expensive, and unmistakably Asher's. With a mischievous smile that should be illegal, he wraps it around my thigh and secures it with a perfect bow, like I'm a gift waiting to be unwrapped, which, apparently, I am. So I stood there, nearly naked, branded by Asher's tie, trembling from head to toe. Asher approaches us with an intensity that makes my breath catch. His steel gray eyes burn with barely contained hunger as they rake over my nearly naked form. Finn turns to him with obvious delight, smiling lazy and pleased. "I know it's bad manners to present a birthday gift early," he says, "but we couldn't hold ourselves back from pleasing you. We've already prepared her, the one and only thing you've ever wanted." My face flames red hot. They're talking about me like I'm an actual present, like they've wrapped me up in Asher's tie and presented me for his enjoyment. The mortifying part? It's turning me on more than I ever thought possible. The idea of being desired by all three of them, of being Asher's gift, makes me feel wanted in a way I've never experienced. I burned under those words, exposed. And yet, I couldn't deny how it thrilled me. Was I really what Asher wanted? Is that true? I dared to meet his gaze, my voice barely a whisper. "Do you really want me?" His steel gray eyes darken with raw hunger that takes my breath away. He can't deny it. The truth is written all over his face in bold letters. "More than anything in my life," he growled, and then he was on me. His mouth crashed into mine, claiming and devouring. The kiss is completely different from the others, demanding, possessive, filled with months of suppressed desire. It's everything I've fantasized about during those late nights when I couldn't sleep. Everything I've imagined when his voice got rough during meetings. It was better than any of my fantasies. So much better. His hands were rough and desperate at first, cupping my face, then sliding down to grip my ass, hauling me into his chest like he was afraid I'd disappear. I melted into him with a moan, completely undone. My knees go weak, and if Liam and Finn weren't supporting me, I'd probably collapse right here on the floor. When Asher finally pulls back, his breathing is ragged. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that. The intensity in his eyes makes my breath catch. Before I can overthink it, my hands fist in his shirt, pulling him closer. I've wanted this too, I admit, the words tumbling out before I can stop them. All of you, I just never thought. Someone like me could have men like you. Asher's expression darkens. Someone like you? I'm just your assistant. I'm nobody special. Stop. His voice cuts through my self-doubt like a blade. You're the woman who turned my worst day into my best strategic move, even when I'm being an ass. Liam's hand cups my face gently. You're the one who lights up every room after you walk into it. The woman who's been driving us absolutely insane, Finn adds, his lips brushing my shoulder. Their conviction overwhelms me, washing away years of feeling invisible, unremarkable. If you're unsure, Finn began, his usual playfulness tempered with genuine concern, we can stop it right now. I look between the three of them, these powerful, incredible men who somehow want me as much as I want them, and feel a certainty I've never experienced before. I don't want to stop, I breathe. Something shifts in Asher's expression, protective and possessive and tender all at once. Without another word, he lifts me effortlessly, and I instinctively wrap my arms around his neck as he carries me to the bedroom. Then let us show you how it feels to be worshipped, he murmurs against my ear. Asher swept me into Liam's bed with terrifying grace, laying me back on cool sheets. I watched him through heavy-lidded eyes, my body aching, soaked, desperate. Finn and Liam followed. Finn's shirt was already halfway unbuttoned, eyes dark and gleaming as he stood near the foot of the bed, watching me with wicked anticipation, while Liam stepped beside the headboard and began to peel off his sleeves. Asher's hands slid along my hips, thumbs hooking the edge of my panties. He glanced up, locking eyes with me. You're still sure? He asked, voice low and quiet, so unlike the man who barked orders in meetings. Yes, I whispered. Please. He slid them down slowly, while my thighs trembled, and knelt between them and leaned in, kissing along the sensitive skin of my inner thighs. Each press of his mouth lit another nerve on fire. I squirmed, breath shaky. So fucking perfect, he murmured, his lips ghosting just above my center. Before I could respond, he slid down my panties and dipped his head to taste me. The cry that left my mouth was raw. Asher moaned into me like he'd been starving for it. His tongue stroked with deep, practiced care, circling my clit in slow, devastating laps. Then his fingers followed, slipping inside me with careful precision, curling gently, opening me up for him. Already so wet, he murmured, kissing the slick mess between my legs. You were made for this. My hips lifted, chasing his mouth, but it was Liam who pressed his hand against my lower belly, grounding me. His other hand came to my breast, thumb brushing over my hard nipple. Such a good girl for us, Liam whispered into my ear as he kissed the shell. Let us be good for you, sweetling. Meanwhile, Asher replaced his fingers with the thick, hot length of his cock, and he paused, waiting for my breath, my nod, my consent. I gave it with a whisper, and then he slid inside. The stretch burned in the most exquisite way. My breath hitched, eyes fluttering closed, as Asher slowly, so carefully, sank in deeper. His mouth met my shoulder, kissing it between ragged breaths. "You're doing so good, Jasmine," he whispered. "So fucking good." As Asher moved inside me, shallow and slow, Liam's lips captured my mouth. Firm, sure, his hand sliding down between my thighs. His fingers found my clit, working it in rhythm with Asher's thrusts, dragging cries from my throat with every pass. Then I felt it before I saw it. Finn's presence shifting at the edge of the bed, one knee on the mattress, eyes locked on mine. His cock already thick in his hand, glistening at the tip with arousal. My lips parted on instinct. "You look like you want to be good for me," he murmured, stroking himself with slow, lazy precision. "Want something between those pretty lips while your tight little pussy's being stretched?" I just whimpered, and his smile deepened, sinful and devastating. "Of course you do." Finn slid his cock across my cheek, then traced the wet tip across my parted lips, smearing precum along them like gloss. My breath hitched, my tongue darting out to taste him, and his groan rumbled through the air like thunder. "That's it," he whispered. "Open wider for me, bunny. Show me how much you want it." I obeyed, mouth stretching open, tongue curled out in offering, eyes glassy with need. God, I wanted it. I wanted him. Finn watched me for one more beat, then finally fed it to me, slowly, inch by glorious inch. I moaned as he slid over my tongue, filling my mouth until my throat tightened around him. "Fuck," he breathed, hips rolling forward, just enough to make me gag. "You look so fucking good like this. Greedy little thing, aren't you?" I couldn't answer, not with a mouthful of him, not with Liam's fingers stroking my clit, and Asher moving inside me, with deep measured thrusts that left me shaking. My moans were helpless and wet, vibrating around Finn's cock, making him grunt and tighten his grip in my hair. "Taking us so well," he growled, fucking just a little deeper, but slow, teasing. "Look at you, bunny. Can't get enough, can you?" I was gone. My body was caught in a storm of sensation. Every nerve screamed for more. I sucked him deeper, hollowing my cheeks, loving the weight of him on my tongue, while Asher's cock dragged against every fluttering, soaked inch inside me. My walls clenched harder, and his groan grew ragged. Liam's voice broke through the haze, low and filthy at my ear. "Mouthful, pussyful, and dripping for it." That was all it took. One dirty talk, and my orgasm slammed into me like fire. I moaned, or more like screamed, around Finn's cock, my body writhing between them, every muscle locking down as I came so hard I forgot where I was. Asher lost his rhythm, groaning low as he spilled inside me, hips jerking erratically, burying himself to the hilt. He whispered something soft, something I couldn't quite make out over the pounding of my heart. But the way he touched me, the way he lingered inside me, said everything. I wasn't just something he wanted, I was something he cherished. But as Asher pulled out, pressing one final kiss to my mouth, I felt Liam shift beside us, his hand sliding along my hip, drawing lazy circles until my breath caught again. "Deep breath, sweetling," he murmured against my ear. My turn now. Chapter 11. I woke up enveloped in warmth, not just from the soft Egyptian cotton sheets, but from the solid presence of Liam on my left, and Finn's arms curled around my waist. But the pleasant ache in my muscles and the lingering sensitivity of my skin told me it had been very, very real. I lay still for a moment, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. Last night, I'd crossed a line I could never uncross with the 3 men I worked for. Men who had bid on my virginity and then treated me like something precious rather than a transaction. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, all I felt was a bone-deep satisfaction and the undeniable knowledge that I was deeply desired. "Good morning, sweetling." Liam's voice was rough with sleep as his arm tightened around my waist. "How are you feeling?" I turned to face him, taking in his tousled hair and the tender way he was looking at me. "Overwhelmed," I admitted honestly. But not in a bad way. Finn stirred behind me, his lips pressing a soft kiss to my bare shoulder. No regrets? No, I said quickly, then paused. But I need to understand what this means, not just emotionally, but professionally. The weight of reality was starting to settle in. These weren't just three attractive men I'd spent the night with. They were my bosses, the owners of the company where I worked. If anyone found out about this, it could destroy my reputation, my career, everything I'd worked for. What happens if people find out? I continued, my voice tight with worry. What happens to my job, my credibility? People will think I slept my way to my position. Liam reached for my hand, his thumb stroking across my knuckles in a soothing gesture. This stays between us. You control every step of what happens next. Finn nodded against my shoulder. We're not going to do anything that puts you at risk. Asher's voice came from the doorway, where he stood leaning against the frame with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He'd clearly been awake for a while, his hair damp from a shower, and dressed in casual clothes that somehow made him look even more dangerous than his usual suits. We understand the complications, he said, moving into the room to set the coffee on the nightstand. We're not going to make this harder for you. I sat up, suddenly very aware of my nakedness, and pulled the sheet up to cover myself. The gesture wasn't lost on any of them, and I saw something flicker in their expressions. I need boundaries, I said firmly. Clear ones. No hints at work, no special treatment, no lingering looks or casual touches. It has to stay strictly confidential. Finn's arm around my waist loosened slightly. Jasmine. I'm serious, I interrupted. I can't have anyone thinking I'm getting ahead, because I'm sleeping with my bosses. My work has to stand on its own. The silence that followed was heavy with frustration, but finally, Liam nodded. If that's what you need, then that's what we'll do. Just promise us honesty if it ever becomes too much. Asher added, his steel-gray eyes intense. Don't suffer in silence to protect our feelings. I nodded, some of the tension leaving my shoulders. I can do that. Liam reached for something on the nightstand, a slim black envelope I hadn't noticed before. He handed it to me with careful reverence. That's the $213,000, Asher explained. No strings attached, it's yours. My breath caught in my throat. I'd almost forgotten about the money in the intensity of everything else that had happened. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and stared at the crisp bills inside. More money than I'd ever seen in one place, enough to save Leo and then some. I looked between the three of them, these powerful, successful men who had somehow seen something in me worth protecting, worth desiring. The envelope in my hands represented freedom from the crushing weight of Leo's debt, but it also represented something else. Their care for me. Thank you, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means. An hour later, I was walking into my apartment building, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. The familiar smell of old coffee and cleaning products hit me as I climbed the stairs, but for once, it didn't depress me. I had the solution to our problems right in my hands. Leo was slumped on the couch when I walked in, exactly where I'd left him the night before. He looked up when he heard the door, and I could see the exhaustion and guilt written all over his face. How did it go? He asked quietly. Any luck with the extra work? I sat down beside him and placed the envelope on the coffee table between us. Open it. Leo frowned, but did as I asked. His eyes went wide when he saw the money inside, and he looked up at me with shock and confusion. Jazz, what is this? Where did you get this much money? I found a way, I said simply. The debt is paid, Leo. You're safe. But how? Don't ever borrow the money to help Mom and Dad, I said, cutting him off before he could ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. You're just feeding their addiction. We have to stop enabling this cycle. Leo's face crumpled. I know. God, I know that now. I was so stupid. You were hopeful, I corrected, my anger softening as I saw the genuine remorse in his eyes. But hope without boundaries is just enabling. They're not going to change, Leo. They made their choice a long time ago. I reached over and squeezed his hand. The debt is handled, but you need to promise me no more contact with them, no more money, no more hoping for something that's never going to happen. Leo nodded, tears streaming down his face. I promise. Thank you, sis. I know you sacrificed something to get this money. I don't know what, but I know it wasn't easy. If only he knew. The next morning at work, I tried to hide the turmoil beneath a calm surface, but it was harder than I'd expected. Every time I looked toward the executive offices, I thought about the night before. About the way they'd touched me, the promises they'd made, the money now safely deposited in my bank account. You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, Finn said, appearing at my desk, with that teasing warmth I was beginning to recognize as uniquely his. I forced a smile. Just tired. Long night. Something flickered in his eyes. Heat, memory, amusement, but his expression remained professionally neutral. Well, make sure you're getting enough rest. Can't have our best assistant burning out. Before I could respond, Liam appeared with 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, setting one on my desk. Our fingers brushed as I reached for it, and for just a moment, the air between us crackled with electricity. Thank you, I managed, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Conference room in 10. Asher's voice cut through the moment as he joined us. We need to discuss the Morrison follow-up. As we walked toward the conference room, I noticed Adeline watching from her desk across the bullpen. Her sharp gaze tracked our movement, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. She'd always been observant, always looking for advantages or angles she could exploit. Everything all right? Liam asked quietly as we passed her desk. Fine, I replied, but I could feel Adeline's eyes boring into my back. Chapter 12. The Morrison follow-up meeting should have been routine, but nothing felt routine anymore. I sat at the conference table, laptop open, trying to focus on quarterly projections and market analysis, but every fiber of my being was hyper-aware of the 3 men around me. I think we're good here, Liam said finally, closing his folder. Jasmine, could you stay behind for a moment? I want to go over the client contact strategy. Finn and Asher exchanged a glance as they gathered their things, but neither commented. As the door closed behind them, the silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we couldn't say. How are you really doing? Liam asked, his voice soft with genuine concern. I know this morning was a lot to process. I looked down at my hands, suddenly feeling vulnerable under his intense attention. I'm okay. Just trying to figure out how to navigate all this. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, close enough to remember how those strong hands had felt on my skin. When he reached out to brush his knuckles against my cheek, I leaned into the touch despite myself. Before I could say something, the conference room door burst open. Oh, sorry. Adeline's voice was bright with false cheer. I didn't realize you were still here. I just needed to grab my notes from earlier. Liam stepped back smoothly, but I caught the flash of irritation in his eyes. She moved to the table with deliberate slowness, her sharp gaze taking in every detail, the way Liam and I were standing, the slight flush I could feel heating my cheeks, the tension that probably radiated from both of us. After she left, Liam ran a hand through his hair, that nervous tell I was learning to recognize. She's going to be a problem, I said quietly. Let me handle that, he replied, but I could see the concern in his expression. Perception can be more dangerous than truth sometimes. As I gathered my things to leave, his hand brushed mine, a subtle touch that felt like a promise amid all the uncertainty. The contact sent warmth shooting up my arm, a reminder of everything we were trying to keep hidden. That evening, I found myself at Liam's penthouse again, but this time in his private studio. He'd mentioned it casually, said I could use it to work on some of the music cues for upcoming projects. But as I sat at the piano, my fingers moving across the keys, I found myself composing something entirely different. The melody started innocent enough, a haunting progression that captured the complexity of my feelings. But as the music carried me away, words began to form. Take control, make me yours tonight. Show me what it means to fall. Your hands, your mouth, your whispered call. I was so wrapped in the music, in the storm of need I'd poured into every lyric, that I didn't hear the door open. Well, well, Finn's voice rolled through the air like silken smoke. What have we stumbled into? I startled, hands flying off the keys. My heart leapt into my throat as I looked up to see him standing just inside the door, Asher close behind. They moved silently, eyes scanning the sheet music scattered across the piano, lyrics dripping with heat, surrender, longing. My breath hitched. I hadn't meant for anyone to see them. It's nothing, I said too quickly, reaching for the pages. Finn stepped in, grabbing one before I could. His eyebrows rose as he scanned the words. Oh, this is definitely something, sweetheart. Asher picked up another sheet. His eyes flicked over the words. His jaw ticked, but not in judgment, in control. You wrote this about him, Finn said softly, stepping closer. About Liam. About how you want him to fuck you. He looked up, eyes gleaming. But I think, maybe you want us too. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The air had thickened, the oxygen sucked out of the room by the weight of what I'd written, what I wanted. Say no, and we'll leave, Asher said, stepping behind me. But I didn't. I couldn't. I wanted this. I ached for it. So I just shook my head slowly. That was all they needed. Finn's hands slid to my hips, pulling me gently back into him, his mouth finding the curve of my neck. He kissed me there, soft, then harder, biting just enough to make me whimper. Asher moved to the front of the piano, tipping my chin up. Look at me, Jasmine. His voice was rough silk. When I obeyed, his mouth crushed against mine. He kissed like a man who never let himself lose control, but was on the edge of it now. I moaned into him as Finn's hands slipped under my shirt, trailing fire across my stomach, then up to cup my breasts through my bra. God, you're beautiful, Finn murmured, pulling my shirt over my head. This fucking body, do you even know what you do to us? Asher unclasped my bra, baring my breasts to the cool air and to their heated eyes. His fingers grazed one nipple, then his mouth replaced them, sucking it into the warmth of his mouth as Finn's hands slid into the front of my jeans. I gasped, hips rocking into his touch. He found the damp heat beneath my panties and groaned against my neck. Already wet? Finn teased, voice husky. You've been thinking about this all day, haven't you? I nodded, helpless as Asher pushed me back against the piano bench. He dropped to his knees in front of me, while Finn knelt behind, stripping me of the last of my clothes with aching slowness. Legs apart, Jasmine, Asher said. Let me taste you. I obeyed, thighs trembling as he slid between them, lifting one over his shoulder. Then his mouth was on me, hot, firm, devastating. His tongue licked a slow stripe through my folds, then circled my clit with agonizing precision. Oh, fuck Ash! I choked out, my hands flying to his head, tangling in his hair. Behind me, Finn's hands stroked my back, my hips, grounding me. Then his fingers joined the fray, two slipping inside me, thick and skilled, thrusting in time with Asher's tongue. My whole body arched. The piano behind me groaned from the strain as I clenched around Finn's fingers, pleasure crashing into me in dizzying waves. That's it, Finn whispered, kissing the back of my neck. Come for us, baby. I did, with a strangled cry, my orgasm tearing through me, shattering me open. I trembled between them, gasping, eyes wet. But they weren't done. Chapter 13. Finn stood, stripped down in moments, revealing smooth skin and hard muscle, and a cock that was already thick and aching for me. He leaned me forward onto the plush rug beneath the piano bench, lifting my hips, positioning himself behind me. Asher rose, still fully clothed, but unzipping his slacks with quiet purpose. I want her mouth, he said, his voice deeper now, rougher. I moaned, dazed and needy, as Finn slid into me from behind in one powerful thrust. "Oh my God!" I gasped, nails digging into the carpet. "Fuck," he groaned, rocking deeper. "So tight, Jasmine. So goddamn perfect." Asher knelt in front of me, one hand cupping my jaw. "Can you take us both again?" he asked. "Or is that too much for our doll face?" I looked up at him, eyes wild. "Please!" His cock brushed my lips, and I opened for him, taking him inch by inch as Finn thrust deeper, harder behind me. The stretch, the fullness, it was overwhelming, and it was everything. They moved in sync, a rhythm of lust and worship. Asher grunted as he slid into my mouth, careful not to push too deep, one hand stroking my cheek, as if to soothe me, even while he fucked my mouth. Finn slammed into me from behind, one hand wrapped around my waist, the other gripping my hair. "You're ours tonight," he growled. My voice was muffled around Asher, but I moaned, the vibrations making Asher curse under his breath. They were everywhere, hands and mouths and skin and heat. And when my second orgasm built, it was feral, unstoppable. I clenched around Finn with a broken scream, pulling off Asher as I cried out. "Fuck, she's coming!" Finn groaned, hips pounding as he spilled inside me. Asher cupped himself, stroking hard as he watched us, then came with a hiss, hot ropes of release painting my breasts. I collapsed between them, breathless and spent, every nerve ending humming. Finn cradled me against his chest, brushing hair from my face. "You okay?" I nodded, still catching my breath. "I should go," I whispered eventually, needing space to process everything that had happened. "Stay," Finn murmured against my shoulder, but I was already extracting myself from their embrace. "I just need some air," I said, grabbing my hoodie and laptop. "I'll see you tomorrow." In my dramatic exit from the studio, I managed to forget the one thing that would absolutely destroy my dignity. Again. My tablet. Still open to the document that basically served as my digital diary of thirst. Those explicit lyrics I'd written about Liam weren't just words on a screen. They were a full confession of every filthy fantasy I'd harbored about my boss. Every late-night thought I'd tried to suppress. Every moment I'd imagined his hands on me instead of those stupid recording console buttons. The realization hit me halfway home like a freight train of mortification. Fuck. 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 I could practically see it playing out. Liam returning to his studio, finding my abandoned device glowing like a beacon of my sexual desperation. Would he close it like a decent human being? Or would curiosity kill the cat and ruin my entire existence? The mental image of him reading those words made me simultaneously want to vomit and combust. I pictured that carefully controlled expression he always wore, the one that gave away absolutely nothing while his brain processed whatever chaos was happening around him. But what would be happening behind those green eyes? Recognition of his pathetic assistant's obsession? Pity? Or worse, complete professional shutdown? The possibility that those lyrics might actually mean something to him sent heat flooding through me, even as panic tried to eat me alive. An hour later, I finally worked up the courage to face whatever fresh hell I'd created. The studio should have been empty. Should have been just me, my tablet, and the sweet relief of deleting evidence. Instead, I walked into my personal nightmare. Liam sat at the console desk, my tablet in his hands, like he'd been studying for finals. The screen was dark now, but his positioning screamed, "I've read every single word of your digital confession." The silence was so loaded it could have powered the entire building. I could see it in everything. His posture, the way his eyes tracked me as I entered, the tension radiating from him like heat waves. He knew. He'd read every raw, desperate word I'd written about him. My face went nuclear, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. I came back for my things. Without a word, Liam stood and moved to the door. The soft click of the lock echoed through the space, and my pulse went from 0 to 60 in approximately half a second. When he turned back, his presence filled the room like he owned every molecule of air in it. "You don't have to hide what you want from me," he said, voice low and earnest as he approached. "Not anymore." I stared at my hands because looking at him felt like staring directly into the sun. Those lyrics, they weren't meant for human consumption. But I consumed them anyway. He stopped close enough that I could feel his body heat, close enough to make my brain malfunction. And they came from somewhere real, didn't they? I nodded because the speech was apparently beyond my current capabilities. "How long?" he asked, voice gentle but insistent. "How long have you been carrying this around?" "Months," I admitted, the word barely audible. "Since I started working here, maybe before. I kept telling myself it was just workplace attraction, nothing serious." The air got thick as Liam closed the distance between us completely. "I've been holding back too," he confessed, voice rough with something that sounded dangerously like need. "Professional boundaries, respect, all that bullshit. But reading what you wrote—" "I was terrified," I interrupted, finally meeting his eyes. "Scared of freaking you out, of nuking everything." Something dark and hungry flashed across his face. "Freaking me out?" His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb stroking across my skin with devastating gentleness. "Jasmine, you have zero idea what you do to me. What you've been doing to me." My breath caught as his other hand found my waist, pulling me closer. That carefully maintained professional control I'd watched him wield in every meeting was starting to crack like ice on hot pavement. "The things you wrote," he murmured, mouth close enough to my ear that I could feel his breath. "The way you want to be watched, claimed, completely consumed." His lips brushed the sensitive spot just below my ear. "Do you still want those things?" The question hung between us like a loaded gun. I could barely function, let alone form coherent sentences, but somehow I managed a whispered, "Yes." The word had barely escaped when his mouth found mine. The kiss controlled but burning with enough heat to melt steel. His hand stayed carefully positioned, face, waist, but I could feel the tension in his entire body, the way he was restraining himself. When he pulled away, we were both breathing like we'd run marathons. "Not here," he said, voice strained. "Not like this." "Liam." "When it happens," he interrupted, eyes boring into mine with an intensity that made my knees forget their primary function, "I won't stop. I won't be gentle or careful or professional. So if we're doing this, it has to be right." The promise in his words sent heat spiraling through every nerve ending, but also something deeper. The knowledge that he was thinking about my comfort, even when his own control was clearly hanging by dental floss. He kissed me once more, softer but no less devastating, before stepping back toward the console. "I'm keeping this," he said, holding up my tablet with those lyrics, "and I might add some composition notes of my own." The implication made my entire body flush with heat. "Go home, Jasmine," he said gently, though his eyes were still dark with promise. "Get some rest." I nodded and moved toward the door, on legs that felt like jello. "And Jasmine?" His voice stopped me at the handle. "Next time you want to tell me something, skip the songwriting. Just tell me." Chapter 14. Apparently, I've acquired a stalker. And not the fun kind that sends flowers and writes poetry. The workplace variety that lurks by copy machines and asks questions designed to make your skin crawl. Adeline. At first, I thought her constant hovering was just standard office nosiness. You know, the kind of boredom-induced curiosity that makes people invest way too much emotional energy in other people's lunch choices. But lately, her casual interest has evolved into something that feels distinctly predatory. "Heading somewhere, Jazz?" She'll chirp with that fake bright voice whenever I so much as breathe in the direction of an exit. Like she's conducting surveillance disguised as small talk. What I'd initially written off as workplace personality disorder is starting to feel calculated, deliberate, the kind of calculated that makes you check over your shoulder and wonder what exactly someone thinks they're going to find. After last night's intensity with Liam, which, holy shit, still makes my brain short circuit when I think about it, I arrived at the office stupidly early, hoping for some quiet before the daily chaos of phones and meetings and people demanding things I may or may not be qualified to provide. The building was practically empty, exactly how I like it. Peaceful. No constant buzz of corporate bullshit that makes clear thinking impossible. I was making coffee in the kitchenette, minding my own goddamn business, when movement caught my peripheral vision. Adeline, materializing like some kind of workplace poltergeist, standing by the counter and fidgeting with a sugar packet, like it held the secrets of the universe. Her smile was textbook professional, but her eyes, sharp as broken glass. "Early start today?" she asked, tone carefully casual. "Or just couldn't sleep?" Classic fishing expedition. The kind of question designed to sound innocent, while actually being loaded with implication. I shrugged, taking a sip of coffee. "Something like that." Her gaze drifted toward the hallway leading to the executive offices, and I swear I could practically hear her brain calculating. "Lots of closed-door meetings lately. You must be exhausted, keeping up with all those private consultations." The way she said private consultations made my skin feel like it was trying to escape my body. There was an insinuation buried in those words, a suggestion that she knew more than she was letting on, which, considering recent developments in my life, was absolutely fucking terrifying. "That's how record labels work," I replied, forcing my voice to stay level. "Confidential projects, strategic planning, standard corporate bullshit." Adeline's laugh was about as genuine as a $3 bill. "Of course, I'm sure it's all very professional." I walked away before I could say something that would confirm whatever suspicions were clearly brewing in her scheming little head. But I could feel her eyes tracking my movement like a predator watching prey. The familiar sensation of being watched settled between my shoulder blades, not out of concern or kindness, but out of that particular brand of curiosity that wants to find something it can use against you. It reminded me of childhood, of my mother pretending she wasn't reading my diary, only to throw my own words back at me during fights weeks later. That same invasive interest disguised as innocent concern. Back at my desk, I tried to focus on emails, but my phone buzzed with a text that made me smile for the first time all morning. "Office lobby, with coffee. Come save me from corporate decor. Nora." Thank Christ. I grabbed my jacket and escaped downstairs, grateful for any excuse to get away from the oppressive feeling of constant surveillance. Nora was waiting by the lobby fountain, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread about successful women who have their shit together. Tailored suit, designer heels, and 2 coffee cups from the expensive place down the street. The kind I could never justify buying for myself. "Okay, spill it," she said without preamble, handing me a latte. "What's wrong? You look like you've been hit by a truck driven by anxiety." I hesitated, unsure how much I could share without revealing the absolute chaos my life had become recently. "Adeline's being weird." "Weird how?" "Like she's trying too hard to seem casual, but she's always around, always watching, always asking loaded questions." I took a sip of the latte, letting the warmth settle my nerves. I can't shake the feeling she's fishing for something specific. Nora's expression shifted into lawyer mode, sharp and analytical. "You've got a corporate spy on your ass." "That's not exactly comforting." "It's accurate, though." She studied my face with the kind of intensity that made her dangerous in courtrooms. "What could she possibly be looking for? You're a model employee, efficient, professional, never causing drama." If only you knew, I thought, remembering the auction, the money, the nights with the Blackwood brothers. Any one of those things would be enough to detonate my entire professional existence if it got out. "Maybe I'm being paranoid," I said, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. "Paranoia is a survival instinct in corporate environments," Nora replied seriously. "Trust your gut. If she's digging, she's got a reason." "So what's my play here?" Nora's smile turned predatory. She'll push, Jazz. That's what people like her do. They push until they find a crack, until they get a reaction that confirms their suspicions. So don't give her one. Easier said than done. Is it, though? Nora stepped closer, her voice dropping to that confident courtroom tone. Look at everything you've survived. Foster care, supporting Leo through his disasters, building a career in one of the most cutthroat industries on the planet. You're not that scared, little assistant, anymore. Her words hit like a revelation. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being the girl who apologized for existing. The promotion, the way the brothers looked at me with actual respect and desire, the knowledge that I could make impossible decisions and live with the consequences, it had all fundamentally changed me. You're right, I said, feeling tension leave my shoulders for the first time all morning. I can handle one nosy coworker. Damn straight you can. Nora squeezed my arm. And if she tries anything, you call me. I'll destroy her so completely, she'll need GPS to find her own reflection. For the first time that morning, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Adeline could watch all she wanted, could fish for information until she grew gills. I wasn't the same woman who'd started at Cadence Records months ago. I was stronger now, more confident in my own worth. And I had an army in my corner. Nora, the brothers, even Leo in his chaotic way. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than she could possibly know. That's what friends are for. Nora checked her watch. Now get back up there and remind them why they're lucky to have you. And remember, you belong in that building just as much as anyone else. Chapter 15. The melody flowed from my fingers like a confession, haunting and raw, each note carrying the weight of emotions I couldn't quite name. I'd found refuge in the small studio on the third floor, the one usually reserved for demo sessions, where the piano sat neglected in the corner. My schedule had mysteriously cleared after lunch, meetings canceled, calls rescheduled, leaving me with unexpected time to think, to feel, and to try to make sense of everything that had happened between me and the three men who had become the center of my world. I was so lost in the music, in the swirling chaos of my thoughts, that I didn't notice anyone enter until a familiar voice broke through the melody. You play like you're telling a secret, Liam murmured. I startled, fingers halting over the keys, my pulse leaping as I turned to find him in the doorway. That dark green gaze, soft and unreadable. He looked like temptation personified, tailored slacks hugging his lean hips, shirt rolled at the forearms, those strong hands I remembered far too well braced casually against the doorframe. I didn't hear you, I whispered. I didn't want to interrupt. He stepped in slowly, as if afraid to break the spell I'd cast in music. That was beautiful. And painful. It's just feelings. Too many of them. It's you, he said, coming to stand beside me. Stripped down. Honest. I've never wanted anything more. He reached out, brushing my fingers on the keys before taking my hand in his. That simple touch felt like the floor falling out beneath me. Then he cupped my cheek and leaned in, his breath warm against my lips. I keep thinking about that promise, I breathed, that once it started, you wouldn't stop. His lips brushed mine, feather-light. Then let me keep it. I surged forward, kissing him like I was already half-starved, and he responded in kind, his mouth taking control, deepening the kiss until my breath caught and my thighs clenched. His hands roamed with purpose, dragging me out of the chair and flushing against his chest. One of his hands slid under my shirt, palm warm on my back, and the other cupped my ass, anchoring me to the hard line of him pressed against me. We didn't hear the door open this time either. Well, well, came Finn's unmistakably amused voice, and here I thought I was interrupting a piano recital. Liam didn't let go. If anything, he held me tighter. Asher followed Finn in, his cool gaze taking us both in with calm precision. We were wondering where you disappeared to, Jasmine. I pulled back slightly, breathless, lips tingling. IME schedule cleared. I didn't know you'd be looking for me. Finn grinned, sauntering over to sit on the piano bench beside me, his hand finding my knee, and giving it a soft squeeze. Funny thing, we might have cleared it. You've been avoiding us, Asher said, moving slowly but deliberately, his presence filling the room like smoke. Why? I wasn't avoiding. Then what? Finn's hand slid up my thigh, under the hem of my skirt. Because you're thinking, processing, but we already know what your body's been screaming for. I shivered. Between Liam still holding me close and Finn's slow exploration, I was unraveling, pulse racing as arousal overtook hesitation. You don't even realize the power you have over us, Finn whispered, mouth near my ear, lips brushing the shell of it. The way you play coy only makes us want to ruin you. Asher came in behind me, his hands resting on my hips. Tell us what you want, Jasmine, he murmured, low and commanding. Tell us, and we'll give it to you. I want. My breath hitched as Finn's hand grazed the lace between my thighs. I want you. All of you. Good girl, Asher said, his praise sending heat straight to my core. Liam turned me to face him, tugging my shirt over my head in one smooth motion. You're trembling, he murmured as he kissed down my neck. Let's make you fall apart. He backed me toward the plush studio couch, while Finn tugged off my skirt, and Asher knelt behind me, unclasping my bra, dragging it slowly down my arms until I stood completely exposed. 3 sets of hands moved in concert, Liam's mouth at my collarbone, Finn kissing across my hip as he sank to his knees, and Asher's hands massaging my breasts with just enough pressure to make my knees buckle. Finn groaned as he buried his face between my legs, his tongue parting my folds and tasting me like he needed it to breathe. My hips bucked against him, the pleasure sharp and immediate, as he flicked his tongue over my clit, teasing before sucking me deep into his mouth. Fuck, I gasped, reaching for Liam as he hovered near my face. He kissed me then, open-mouthed, slow and deep, while Asher pinched my nipple and whispered filthy praise into my ear. So wet already, Asher murmured. Look at you, taking Finn's tongue like a good girl. Finn growled into me, the vibration making me cry out as my first orgasm crested. I shook against them, my body racked with the intensity of it, but they didn't stop. Liam guided me down onto the couch, lying back so I straddled his hips. I felt the hard length of him pressed between us, his hands gripping my thighs. Ride me, he said, voice thick with need. Take what you need. I positioned myself over him, gasping as he filled me slowly, inch by glorious inch, until I was fully seated, stretched around him. God, Liam, I moaned, rolling my hips. He groaned, fingers digging into my skin. You feel like heaven. While I rode Liam, Asher stepped behind me, sliding his fingers between my cheeks, teasing, slicking me with lube I hadn't even noticed him opening. You want more? He asked against my ear. Yes, please, Asher. He pressed a single finger in, gentle but relentless, and then another, stretching me carefully as Liam thrust up into me. The pleasure was overwhelming, Liam deep inside me, Asher stretching me open with agonizing skill, Finn's cock filling my mouth as he groaned and stroked my hair. You're perfect like this, Liam rasped. Fucked full, used, worshipped. I whimpered as Asher pressed the thick head of his cock against my ass, slow and steady, filling me inch by inch. The sensation was intense, fuller than I'd ever felt. My mouth fell open as I was completely claimed, one cock in my pussy, the other deep in my ass, their bodies caging me in. God! I choked out, overwhelmed. So full! Liam kissed my mouth, swallowing the sound. You're taking us so well, Jasmine. Look at you! You were made for this, Asher groaned, thrusting shallowly at first, hands gripping my hips tight. Made for us. Finn, kneeling beside us, guided my hand to his cock, hard and flushed. You've got one more, he murmured, brushing his lips over mine. Think you can take it? I met his gaze and nodded. He slid his cock between my lips, groaning as I took him deep into my throat, gagging slightly before relaxing my jaw and giving him everything. I was filled in every way. Liam's cock deep and steady, Asher fucking my ass with slow, punishing thrusts, and Finn using my mouth like he'd dreamed about it. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but feel. They didn't rush, they didn't push me too far. Every move was measured. Every thrust meant to build me higher, to worship me while utterly ruining me. We moved together in a rhythm that defied logic. Liam thrusting up, Asher pushing in behind me, Finn fucking my mouth gently until I could hardly think, until all I could feel was the tidal wave of sensation building inside me. When I came again, shaking and raw, it was like being set on fire from the inside. The pressure in my core exploded, and I screamed around Finn's cock, collapsing forward as I clenched around both men inside me. That triggered everything. Finn pulled out and came across my tongue and lips, groaning my name like a benediction. Liam cursed beneath me, slamming into me hard one final time before he came with a deep, hoarse growl. Asher's thrusts became erratic. Then his cock pulsed deep in my ass as he let go with a sharp gasp. He pulled out slowly, murmuring soft praise as he kissed my shoulder. Liam caught my face between his palms and kissed me gently, reverently. They caught me as I collapsed, boneless and undone, kisses soft and whispered praise washing over me like balm. "You're ours," Liam whispered again, brushing hair from my face. "Always," Asher added. Finn pressed his lips to my forehead. "And we're yours, Jazz." Chapter 16. I barely managed to get my key in the lock without dropping it like some kind of amateur burglar. My hands were still shaking from the studio, from being surrounded by all three of them, from feeling like the center of their goddamn universe for the first time in my life. The tension was still clinging to my skin, like expensive perfume you can't wash off no matter how hard you scrub. The apartment hit me with that particular brand of silence that makes you hold your breath. Too quiet, too still. I paused in the entryway, listening for signs of Leo. Light leaked from under his bedroom door, along with the muted chaos of some video game soundtrack. Probably deep in a raid with his online friends, saving digital worlds while I was out here fucking up my real one. Perfect. I needed a minute to get my shit together. I set my bag down like it contained nuclear weapons, trying not to make any noise that might summon questions I couldn't answer. That was fast. Miss me already? I spun around so hard, I probably gave myself whiplash. Finn was leaning against my kitchen doorframe like he owned the place. Trademark cocky smile in full effect. "What the actual fuck are you doing here?" I whispered, my heart attempting to escape through my throat. "Relax, bunny." He pushed off the wall with that predatory grace that made my brain malfunction. "I wanted to see you." "How did you even—" I moved toward him on autopilot, torn between wanting to shove him out the window and pull him closer. "How are you in my apartment?" "Fire escape. Your bedroom window was unlocked." His smile widened at my expression of pure horror. "Don't worry, I didn't go through your underwear drawer. Though the temptation was real." I reached out to shove him, but he was faster, catching my wrists like he'd been expecting it. His touch was gentle but firm, and suddenly I was hyper-aware of how close we were, how the kitchen light made shadows dance across his face. "Leo's home," I hissed, glancing toward the hallway. "He doesn't know about any of this clusterfuck. You can't be here." Something shifted in his expression, that playful smile softening into something that looked almost sincere. "I know, I just—" He paused, thumb stroking across my wrist where he held me. "Couldn't stop thinking about you, about what happened." Despite my panic about being caught, heat pooled low in my belly. The way he was looking at me, like I was something precious he wanted to protect and devour simultaneously, made it impossible to remember why this was dangerous. "If I kissed you right here, right now," he said quietly, voice dropping to that register that made my knees forget their primary function, "would you stop me?" My breath caught. You can't kiss me like you mean it. Not here. Not with Leo. But he was already leaning in, lips finding mine in a kiss that was soft and secret, and completely devastating. Not the hungry, demanding kiss from the studio. This was tender, almost reverent, like he was trying to memorize my taste. I melted into him despite every rational thought screaming in my head, hands fisting in his shirt as he kissed me with a gentleness that made my chest ache. For a moment, the world narrowed to just this, his mouth on mine, his hands cupping my face. The way he made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered in the entire fucking universe. The sound of Leo's door creaking open shattered the moment like a gunshot. I shoved Finn away with enough force to knock him into next week, panic flooding my system like ice water. Go, I mouthed silently, pointing toward the window. Finn's eyes sparkled with amusement, even as he backed toward my bedroom. Sweet dreams, bunny, he whispered, then disappeared through the window with ninja-level stealth. I closed the window behind him, heart still trying to break the sound barrier, and attempted to look like someone who definitely hadn't just been making out with her boss in the kitchen. The next morning, I found Leo in the kitchen, flipping eggs with the kind of practiced ease that came from years of taking care of himself. His dark hair was doing its usual impression of a tornado, gaming headphones hanging around his neck like a collar. Look who finally decided to join the land of the living, he said without looking up. I was starting to think you died in your sleep. Hilarious. I poured coffee from the pot he'd already made, grateful for his thoughtfulness. How long have you been up? A couple hours, couldn't sleep. He slid perfect eggs onto 2 plates, adding toast that somehow wasn't burned to charcoal. Hey, whose jacket was on the couch last night? Navy blue, expensive looking, definitely not yours or mine. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Shit. Shit, shit, shit. Jacket? Yeah, when I got up for water around midnight, there was this men's jacket just sitting there. Designer by the look of it. Leo's tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp when he looked at me. Want to explain that? Oh, that. My brain scrambled for an explanation that wouldn't sound completely insane. Just borrowed it from someone at work yesterday. It was cold when I left the office. Borrowed it from someone at work, Leo repeated slowly. And they were cool with you taking home a jacket that probably costs more than our car? It's not that expensive, I said weakly, knowing I was digging my own grave. Leo set down his fork and really looked at me then, expression shifting from playful to concerned. You're lying to me, and you're sucking at it. What's going on, Jazz? The room suddenly felt like it was shrinking, walls closing in. Leo's calm concern was somehow worse than anger would have been. He was worried about me, and I was sitting here spinning bullshit to protect secrets I couldn't share. Did you do something stupid and scared to tell me? He asked gently, and the question hit like a physical blow. Is that do something with money for my debt? My throat tightened. I didn't do anything shady, I whispered, hating how the words felt like lies even as I said them. Because I hadn't done anything shady, exactly. But I had crossed lines I'd never imagined crossing. I had let 3 men bid on my virginity, accepted money that could be seen as payment for services, entered into a relationship that could destroy everything if anyone found out. Leo took a bite of toast, movements deliberate. You're glowing again, by the way, he said lightly, eyes never leaving my face. I laughed nervously, the sound too high and bright. Glowing? What does that even mean? It means you look different, happier maybe, more confident. He tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle. Like someone who's been getting really good news, or really good. Leo, I cut him off, sinking into my chair before my knees gave out. He held up his hands in surrender, but his smile was knowing. I'm just saying, whatever's going on, it's not all bad. You seem lighter, less stressed. If only he knew my reduced stress came from having enough money to pay off his debt. Money I'd earned in ways I could never explain. I'm fine, I said, forcing my voice steady. Everything's fine. Leo nodded, but I could see he didn't believe me. He was too smart, knew me too well, but he also knew when to push and when to let things go. Okay, he said simply. But Jazz, whatever it is you can't tell me, just be careful, all right? You're all I've got. The words hit me right in the chest, a reminder of what was at stake. Leo might not know about the dangerous men who'd threatened him or the desperate measures I'd taken to protect him, but he knew I was keeping secrets, and he trusted me anyway. I'm always careful, I lied, thinking about Finn climbing through my bedroom window, about the way all three brothers made me lose control completely. Chapter 17. I arrived at the studio stupid early, hoping the quiet morning hours would help settle whatever restless chaos had kept me doing interpretive dance with my bedsheets all night. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Despite my Oscar-worthy performance of normalcy, nodding to security, smiling at interns like I wasn't slowly losing my goddamn mind, I couldn't shake this feeling that everything was about to implode spectacularly. Finn's midnight fire escape visit, Leo's suspicious jacket interrogation, the growing pile of secrets I was carrying around like radioactive luggage. Everything felt fucking precarious, like I was doing circus acts on glass that could shatter if someone looked at it wrong. I needed coffee and 5 minutes to get my shit together before facing whatever fresh hell the day had planned for me. But of course, because the universe apparently has a sick sense of humor, I wasn't alone in the break room. Adeline stood by the coffee machine like some kind of corporate vulture, eyes flicking up from her phone with that sharp, assessing glance that made my skin crawl. "Early bird, huh?" she said, voice smooth but edged with something that sounded distinctly predatory. "Burning the candle at both ends?" I forced a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. "Yeah, just trying to stay ahead. You know how it is." Her laugh was soft but cold enough to freeze hell over. Funny how some people always manage to be one step ahead, and others just get left behind. The words hit like carefully aimed arrows, each one loaded with meaning, designed to make me squirm. My heart did this weird skippy thing, but I kept my expression neutral because I'm apparently a masochist who enjoys psychological warfare at 7 a.m. "I'm not worried about that," I said, which was basically the biggest lie I'd told since pretending Leo's mysterious jacket situation was totally normal. Her smile sharpened, and it definitely didn't reach her eyes. "You should be." There it was, the barely veiled threat hanging in the air like toxic smoke. I nodded carefully, not trusting my mouth to form words that wouldn't confirm whatever suspicions were clearly brewing in her scheming little brain. Adeline gathered her things with deliberate slowness, every movement designed to prolong this uncomfortable moment, because she's apparently fluent in psychological torture. "Have a good day, Jasmine," she said with fake sweetness that could rot teeth, then left me alone with my spiraling thoughts and caffeine dependency. Back at my desk, I tried to focus on emails and scheduling, but my brain kept doing laps around Adeline's words. The tension from my encounters with the brothers felt like it was radiating from my skin in visible waves, like I was walking around with a neon sign that screamed, "Recently being fucked by Trinity bosses." A company-wide memo caught my attention as I scrolled through my inbox. Updated visitor protocols and photography guidelines. The timing felt about as subtle as a brick to the face. Were they cracking down on security because someone had reported suspicious activity? Was this Adeline's doing? I was still processing the implications when I passed a side conference room and heard a familiar voice through the partially open door. "Jasmine Harlow. Yes, that's her full name." Adeline's tone was businesslike, professional. "I think you'll find the information very interesting." My blood turned to actual ice water. She was talking about me. To someone. About what exactly? My browser history? My recent financial windfall? My extracurricular activities with the executive team? I forced myself to keep walking like a normal person who definitely wasn't having an internal meltdown, but the conversation continued behind me. Adeline's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that I couldn't make out, which was somehow worse than if I'd heard everything. the confirmation that my paranoia was actually justified hit me like a freight train made of anxiety. I retreated to the emergency stairwell because concrete walls felt safer than the open office, where anyone could be watching, listening, taking notes for Adeline's apparent investigation into my life choices. My phone buzzed. Text from Nora. Your cute puppy is still on your trail. Maybe it's time to kick it or get a leash. Fresh waves of paranoia crashed over me, like toxic surf. If Nora had noticed Adeline's behavior too, then this situation was worse than I'd thought. The net was closing, and I had no idea how much she actually knew or what evidence she might have gathered. The thought that she might have photos of me with the brothers, stolen moments in offices or hallways, made my stomach perform Olympic-level gymnastics. In this age of smartphones and social media, privacy was basically extinct. One picture could destroy everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built. That evening, I returned home feeling like I'd been through a psychological blender. I locked the door behind me with extra care, checking it twice, because apparently I'm developing OCD tendencies to go with my growing paranoia. The apartment felt like a refuge, but even here I couldn't fully relax. Every shadow looked suspicious. Every sound from the hallway made me tense like I was expecting SWAT teams or corporate investigators or whatever the fuck Adeline had unleashed. I sank onto the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through my contacts like they might hold answers to questions I couldn't even articulate. I wanted to call someone, Nora maybe, or one of the brothers. But what would I say? Hey, so I think a coworker is investigating my life, and I'm slowly losing my shit because I've been keeping secrets that could destroy everything, and also I may have developed an addiction to dangerous men who climb through my bedroom window? Yeah, that conversation would go well. Instead, I sat in the gathering darkness, phone clutched in my hands like a lifeline, waiting for something I couldn't name. Every notification made my heart race. Every sound from the hallway sent adrenaline shooting through my system like I was mainlining espresso. I felt like prey being circled by a predator who was taking their sweet time before moving in for the kill. The anticipation was almost worse than whatever was coming. How long before everything falls apart? How long before the careful balance I'd been maintaining collapses like a house of cards in a hurricane? The questions spun through my head on repeat, but the answers stayed frustratingly out of reach. All I could do was wait and try not to lose my mind completely in the process. Easier said than done when your entire life has become a high-stakes game of emotional Jenga. Chapter 18. Discipline. That was my brilliant strategy for not combusting into a million pieces of professional inappropriateness. My master plan involved keeping my head down, maintaining distance, and focusing solely on work like some kind of corporate monk who'd taken a vow of sexual celibacy. No more stolen glances that made my pulse forget how to behave. No more lingering in hallways hoping for encounters I definitely shouldn't want, but absolutely fucking did. Just professionalism, productivity, and the soul-crushing safety that came with being invisible. I entered the studio that morning with the kind of purpose usually reserved for people storming beaches or conquering nations. Spine straight, expression carefully neutral, ready to win the Oscar for most boring employee ever. I greeted coworkers with those polite nods and brief smiles that said, "I'm friendly, but not friendly. Professional, but not personal. Available for work discussions, but not emotional intimacy." My laptop bag felt like it was carrying actual rocks instead of electronics. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m., like some kind of productivity psychopath, finishing every track, every demo, every piece of work that might be scrutinized by anyone with functioning eyeballs and an opinion. I was determined not to leave anything half done or vulnerable to criticism. If I was going to be a boring, invisible employee, I was going to be the most competent, boring, invisible employee in the history of corporate mediocrity. At the studio lounge, I set my laptop down like I was defusing a bomb and attached a yellow sticky note. Demos ready for review, J.H. Then I disappeared faster than dignity at a college party before anyone could engage me in conversation about work or anything else that might compromise my newfound commitment to emotional unavailability. The writer's bullpen became my refuge, my fortress of solitude, my corporate witness protection program. Tucked away with the junior songwriters and session musicians, I felt invisible in a way that had once frustrated me, but now provided blessed relief. Here, I was just another face in the creative chaos, free from Adeline's passive-aggressive surveillance and those intense, knowing looks that made my skin feel too tight, and my brain forget basic functions like breathing. I'd grown to dread Liam's looks especially. The way his green eyes seemed to see straight through my professional facade, to the woman who'd melted under his touch just days before. Every time he appeared in my peripheral vision, my pulse would spike and my carefully constructed composure would threaten to crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. So I avoided him. All of them, like they were walking, talking temptations designed specifically to destroy my life. When Liam's voice carried across the bullpen, discussing arrangements with one of the producers, I kept my eyes superglued to my screen and my headphones firmly planted like armor against auditory seduction. When Asher paused at the bullpen entrance, those steel-gray eyes sweeping the room in search of someone, me, probably, I hunched lower in my chair and pretended to be completely absorbed in scheduling emails that were about as interesting as watching paint dry. Finn's text arrived around 2 p.m. like a guided missile aimed directly at my resolve. "Miss you today, Bunny? Everything okay?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering over the keyboard like it was a trigger I was afraid to pull. It was the first message from any of them that I'd left unanswered in weeks, and the guilt felt like swallowing broken glass. But answering would mean engagement. Engagement would mean risking the careful distance I was trying to maintain. So I closed the message without responding, which felt like emotional vandalism but seemed necessary for survival. The afternoon stretched on in deliberate isolation. I ate lunch at my makeshift desk like some kind of corporate hermit, declined invitations to join group discussions, and kept my interactions brief and professional enough to put people to sleep. Every smile felt forced. Every conversation was carefully monitored for potential landmines that could explode my cover of boring competence. It felt harsh, this self-imposed exile. The easy camaraderie I'd started enjoying with my coworkers, the sense of belonging I'd begun to feel in this world, all of it sacrificed on the altar of self-preservation. But it was necessary. Adeline was watching like a hawk circling roadkill, waiting for any sign of impropriety. The brothers' attention, no matter how carefully disguised, was too intense to hide forever. Someone would notice. Someone would talk. Someone would put the pieces together and destroy everything I'd worked to build. By early evening, the silence around my work had become deafening. When I returned to collect my laptop from the lounge, I found it exactly where I'd left it, but the sticky note was gone. Someone had reviewed the demos, listened to hours of my work, but chosen not to seek me out for discussion or feedback. The absence of contact felt like both relief and rejection, like being ghosted by your own professional accomplishments. As I prepared to leave, gathering my things with the same methodical care I'd used all day, I caught sight of Adeline near the elevator bank. She was leaning against the wall, phone in hand, but her attention wasn't on the screen. Her eyes tracked my movement with calculating precision, cataloging every detail of my appearance and behavior like I was evidence in a case she was building. I forced myself to walk past her with confidence I didn't feel, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I didn't acknowledge her presence, didn't meet her gaze, didn't give her any ammunition to use against me. But as the elevator doors slid closed, I caught her reflection in the polished metal, still watching, still assessing, expression unreadable but intent. The descent to the lobby felt endless, each floor marking another small victory in my campaign of avoidance. I'd made it through an entire day without compromising myself, without giving anyone reason to question my professionalism or dedication. So why did it feel like losing? Tomorrow I'd do better. Tomorrow I'd be stronger. tomorrow I'd probably hate myself just a little bit more for choosing safety over things that made me feel alive. Chapter 19. By late afternoon, I realized I'd fucked up spectacularly. My brilliant strategy of emotional unavailability had apparently crossed the line from professional distance to complete asshole behavior. The realization hit me like a brick to the face when I stepped into Studio 4B and immediately noticed the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Liam sat forward on the leather couch, notebook in hand, his usual golden retriever energy replaced by something more rigid and pissed off. Asher stood by the mixing board, radiating that particular brand of controlled fury that made my stomach clench into origami shapes. Finn leaned against the piano, but his trademark easy smile had gone AWOL, replaced by a seriousness that looked foreign on his features. Well, shit. Hey, I said, my greeting landing somewhere between polite and pathetic. I left the demos earlier. Hope everything was good. The silence that followed stretched longer than a CVS receipt. Asher's frown could have carved glass. You didn't exactly stick around, Jasmine. Yeah, where'd you disappear so fast? Finn's tone was light, but I caught the hurt underneath it, which was somehow worse than outright anger. Liam didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with those piercing green eyes that always made me feel like he was reading my browser history. His gaze was sharp enough to perform surgery, making me feel exposed in a way that had nothing to do with clothing and everything to do with the walls I'd been building. I had other work to catch up on, I said weakly, knowing it sounded about as convincing as a politician's campaign promises. Other work, Asher repeated, voice flat as roadkill. More important than discussing the tracks you spent all night perfecting? Before I could formulate a response that didn't make me sound like a complete disaster, the studio door opened with a sharp click. Adeline swept in with that bright but forced smile I'd grown to dread, like root canals and tax audits. Sorry to interrupt, she said, eyes immediately finding mine like heat-seeking missiles. But I'll need Jasmine's update for tomorrow's schedule before 6. There are some timing conflicts that need immediate attention. Liam stood smoothly, his movement controlled, but carrying unmistakable authority. Adeline, can you give us a minute? This is a production review. Oh, of course, sir, Adeline replied, but her eyes flicked between me and the three brothers, cataloging every detail with that sharp intelligence I'd learned to fear. Her smile looked about as genuine as a knockoff Rolex. I'll just wait outside then. Actually, Liam's voice carried a finality that could stop traffic. Why don't you handle the scheduling conflicts yourself? I'm sure someone with your experience can manage timeline adjustments. For a moment, something flickered across Adeline's expression. Surprise, maybe even annoyance. But she recovered faster than a cat landing on its feet. Of course, I'll take care of it. She turned and left, heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown timer, the sound echoing even after the door closed. She's been glued to you lately, Finn muttered, pushing off from the piano. Like a shadow you can't shake. I glanced down at my hands, fidgeting with my bag strap like it held the secrets of the universe. She's always around, part of her job, I guess. Is it? Asher asked pointedly. Because last I checked, her job description didn't include stalking you like a discount private investigator. She's not stalking me, I protested, but even I could hear how unconvincing it sounded. Liam stepped closer, his presence immediately commanding my attention like a gravitational pull. Something's happening beneath the surface, Jasmine. We can all feel it. The question is whether you're going to trust us enough to tell us what it is. Or if you're going to keep pulling away and pretending we don't exist, Asher added bluntly, his frustration finally breaking through his controlled exterior, like water through a dam. I'm not pretending you don't exist, I said, voice rising slightly. I'm trying to be professional. I'm trying to... To what? Finn interrupted gently. To disappear? Because that's what it feels like you're systematically erasing yourself from our lives. We've been watching you disappear in real time, Liam said, voice softer now but no less intense. And we're not going to stand by and let it happen. The weight of their combined attention, their genuine concern, was overwhelming. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes and blinked them back furiously, because crying at work was not on my agenda for today. I don't want to make things harder, I whispered. For any of us. Things are complicated enough already. Harder how? Asher demanded. By being honest about what's happening between us? By acknowledging that this thing we have is real? By risking everything we've all worked for? I shot back. By giving people like Adeline ammunition to use against us? Liam's expression softened, and he reached out as if to touch my face, then stopped himself, hand falling back to his side. We're not going to let you isolate yourself to protect us, Jasmine. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? I asked desperately. Because I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know how to be professional and distant during the day, and then, whatever this is at night. You don't have to figure it out alone, Finn said, moving closer until the three of them formed a loose circle around me. That's what we're trying to tell you. Come to dinner tonight, Asher said suddenly. At Liam's place. Nothing formal, nothing complicated. Just us talking like we used to before you decided we were too dangerous to be around. I never said you were dangerous, I protested. You didn't have to, Liam replied. Your actions said it loud and clear. I looked between the three of them, seeing the hurt I'd caused written in their expressions, despite their attempts to hide it. The realization that my self-preservation had wounded them made my chest tight with guilt and other emotions I wasn't ready to name. I don't know if that's a good idea, I said quietly. It's a terrible idea, Finn agreed with a slight smile. Most of our best ideas are, but we're asking anyway. Please, Liam added, and the simple word carried more weight than any elaborate argument could have. Just come. Let us cook for you. Let us take care of you for one evening. Let us be more than whatever professional relationship you're trying to force us into. The studio fell quiet, except for the soft hum of equipment and the distant sounds of the building settling around us. I could feel their expectation, their hope, their determination not to let me slip away completely. Okay, I whispered finally. Okay. The relief that flooded their faces was immediate and overwhelming. Asher's shoulders dropped like he'd been carrying concrete. Finn's smile returned like sunrise after a storm. Liam's eyes softened with something that looked like gratitude mixed with relief. 7 o'clock, Liam said. I'll send a car. I can drive myself. 7 o'clock, he repeated firmly. The car will be there. As they began to file out of the studio, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and pounding heart, I realized I was deeper than I'd ever intended to be. Their combined presence, their subtle gestures of care and protection, their refusal to let me disappear. It was overwhelming and terrifying, and exactly what I hadn't known I needed. What the hell was I getting myself into? Chapter 20. I stared at the cursor blinking in my email draft like it was mocking my entire existence. Every word to Adeline needed to be perfect, professional, distant, giving away absolutely nothing while maintaining the facade that I wasn't slowly losing my goddamn mind. Adeline, please find attached the updated press conference schedule as requested. All media contacts have been confirmed and catering arrangements finalized. Best regards, Jasmine Harlow. I read it twice, hunting for any hint of emotion or vulnerability that might betray me. The tone was neutral enough to put people to sleep, minimal enough to avoid analysis, exactly what it needed to be. I hit send before I could overthink myself into paralysis. By 7 p.m., the office had begun its familiar death ritual. Conversations died in hallways like deflating balloons. Desk lights clicked off one by one. The constant hum of corporate chaos slowly faded into blessed silence. I stayed glued to my desk, pretending to work on scheduling emails, while actually waiting for the building to become a ghost town. I needed the quiet, the assurance that no one was watching, No one was documenting my movements or timing my departure like some kind of workplace stalker. Adeline had left an hour ago, her sharp gaze doing one final sweep of the office before she disappeared into the elevator like a corporate vampire returning to her lair. But I'd learned not to trust appearances where she was concerned. That woman could probably spy on people through security cameras and office plants. At 8 o'clock, I finally gathered my shit and made my escape to the lobby. The security guard nodded as I passed, and then I was pushing through glass doors into cool night air that felt like freedom. The tension I'd carried all day began loosening its death grip on my shoulders as I stepped onto the sidewalk. A familiar black sedan waited at the curb, engine purring quietly. Through tinted windows, I could make out 3 silhouettes in the back seat. My pulse quickened, but not with the anxiety that had been eating me alive all day. This was different, anticipation mixed with relief, like coming home after being lost in the wilderness. I slid into the back seat, where Liam, Asher, and Finn were already waiting. The atmosphere was calm, but I could feel their attention on me in the dim light like warm spotlights. "Long day?" Liam asked gently, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the engine. "You could say that." I leaned back against leather that probably cost more than my monthly rent, watching city lights blur past the window like neon tears. "You didn't answer my text," Finn said, his usual playful tone subdued. "That's not like you." I glanced at him, seeing genuine concern in his expression instead of his trademark smirk. I needed space to think. "About us?" Asher's question was as direct as a bullet. "About everything." I turned to meet his steel gray gaze. "About what this means, what people might see, what could happen if Adeline keeps digging," Liam finished quietly. I nodded, surprised he understood so clearly. "You noticed." "We notice everything about you," Asher said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. When we arrived at the villa, something shifted. As I reached for the door handle, I found all 3 of them moving simultaneously, stepping out of the car and coming around to my side like some kind of coordinated gentleman operation. They stood there in the soft glow of streetlights, hands extended toward me like an offering. Without hesitation, I reached out and took all 3 hands at once. Liam's fingers intertwined with mine on the left, strong and steady like an anchor. Asher's grip was firm on the right, his thumb stroking across my knuckles. Finn's hand found mine in the center, warm and reassuring. The gesture felt symbolic as fuck, 3 connections forming one, a moment of trust and unity that grounded me more than anything had in weeks. Standing there in the quiet street, connected to all of them simultaneously, I felt some essential part of myself click back into place like a puzzle piece finding its home. Inside the villa, soft music played from hidden speakers, and warm light spilled from table lamps. The contrast to the fluorescent corporate hellscape was immediate and comforting. "Better?" Finn asked, watching as my shoulders visibly relaxed from their positions somewhere around my earlobes. "Much." I took a deep breath, feeling some of the day's tension leave my body like toxic smoke. I forgot what it felt like to not be under surveillance. "You were protecting yourself," Liam said, loosening his tie. "We understand that." "Do you?" I turned to face all 3 of them, because I felt like I was going insane today, hiding from you, avoiding calls, pretending I didn't want to be near you when all I could think about was what? Asher prompted when I trailed off. This. Being here. Being able to breathe again without feeling like I'm suffocating on my own secrets. Finn stepped closer, his expression soft. "Then why didn't you just talk to us? We would have figured something out." "Because talking to you makes me forget to be careful," I admitted. "And I can't afford to forget. Not with Adeline watching every move I make like I'm Exhibit A in her personal investigation." "What did she do today?" Liam's voice carried a protective edge that made my chest tight. "Nothing concrete. Everything is subtle. But I overheard her on a phone call mentioning my name." I wrapped my arms around myself. She's building a case against me. I can feel it in my bones. Against us, you mean? Asher corrected. If she goes after you, she goes after all of us. The simple statement of unity made my throat tighten with emotions I wasn't ready to name. You don't understand what you're risking, I said. Yes, we do, Liam said firmly, and we're choosing to risk it anyway. As we walked deeper into the villa, I finally found the courage to voice what had been eating at me all day like acid. I wasn't avoiding you, I said quietly. Liam glanced back at me. We know. I'm just tired, I added. Tired of pretending. Tired of watching every word, every look, every fucking breath. Asher gave me a slow nod. You've been carrying a lot. Too much, Finn agreed, bumping his arm gently against mine. That's why we're here, so you don't have to carry it alone like some kind of emotional pack mule. But what if someone finds out? The fear that had been plaguing me spilled out like poison. What if Adeline has photos or witnesses, or— Then we deal with it, Liam said simply. Together. You make it sound so easy. Not easy, Asher corrected, but simple. We're not going anywhere, Jasmine, no matter what she throws at us. For the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe properly, instead of taking shallow sips of air like I was drowning. Promise me something, I said. Anything, Finn said immediately. If this gets too dangerous, if it threatens your careers or the label, you'll let me walk away. No! All three of them said in unison, the firmness of their response startling me like a slap. Jasmine, Liam continued, stopping to face me fully, you're not walking away from us. Not because of Adeline, not because of fear, not for any reason. We're past that now. Looking at their faces, determined and protective and absolutely fucking serious, I realized they meant it. Every word. For the first time in a long while, I stopped fighting against what I wanted and let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to face this alone. This is where I belong.